You can't polish a turd. You don't craft a silk purse from a pig's ear, and you can't make out Swindon Town asserts for a promotion challenge, let alone the autos. Just yet. As glass half full as we at Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge like to be, mugs we are not. Currently, if Swindon Town Football Club were a star prize at a New Year's Eve party raffle, someone clearly forgot the batteries. Like the classy looking radio controlled Lamborghini Uncle Sandro gifted wee Scotty, it's presently not much cop. And sadly, Clem doesn't accept returns this side of Boxing Day. Well, as promises of swashbuckling football played through the thirds and we're going to have a good time are diluted by hasty recalculation of young squad stalling into a frustrating plateau, Town fans are increasingly exploring exactly what it is they believe needs changing. Well, with your help, we're going to be doing a bit more of that ourselves this evening. We're going to be exploring the silver linings in that as well. They still undeniably exist. We're sixth in the league, 8 points off automatic promotion, and there's 22 games still to play. 22, count them. Financial sustainability, stadium purchase, and the January transfer window has swung wide open. Will Town be greedy hoarders of bottles of prime, storming the market and yanking multi-packs from the clutches of less committed punters? Dirty tracksuits and Parkers optional, dear shoppers. Well, then, of course, we have the 14th of January, a distinctly fishy whiff in the air as we'll toast the return of a certain Lord Charles Austin, Esquire of Hungerford, to this glorious parish. Catalyst or cog in a seized engine? How do we believe we're going to get the best out of Charlie? Will join us for the deep dive, ladies and gents, and hang on tight. One thing's for sure, January is going to be characteristically emotional. Gallows humour, perhaps, but let's try and have a giggle tonight. If you don't laugh, you'll only cry. Well, joining me this evening is, of course, my wonderful panel, selected as such. Joe, good evening to you, pal.
Good evening, buddy. How's it going?
Not so bad. I've just about shrugged off the man flu. Left me a little.
Yeah, mate. I think you've given it to me over WhatsApp or something.
Quite possibly. Left me a little short of breath, but no short of gusto and hyperbole, let me tell you. Joining myself and Joe is the inimitable champ. How are we, Ellis?
I am wonderful, thank you. How are you,
I feel
Hannes?
like I've gone a couple of rounds with you, pal, to be totally frank. The head's absolutely banging, and I've only just got my voice back today, but here we go. Speaking of voices, there's no finer voice in this parish than Mike. How are we, big man?
I'm very well, thank you, Hannes. Looking forward to a good episode tonight. Obviously, I know it's a bit of, I guess, unrest in the fan base at the moment. But really quickly, I also just wanted to say, everyone who's listening, if you could just join me in giving a really quick applause emoji for Joe. He's just literally within the last hour secured a new job. So big up, well done, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, you're too cute.
Yes, Joe Vincent is now to be found on roaming the darkened streets near Swindon Town's train station, scantily clad in high heels, and he does a going rate for Town fans. So please make your way down there, locate the gentleman, and give him a good service.
My new raincoat's in the post.
We've also got on board the man that puts no in Northerner. Chris, good evening.
Evening, Hannes, and everyone else on the panel, and everyone else listening in tonight.
See, sooner or later, someone's going to laugh at that joke, and I'm going to keep persevering until someone does. And whilst we're on the subject of good northern folk, we've also got Max with us. How are you, Max?
Evening, mate. All good up north here.
Hey, that's what I like to hear. And we've got the most recent acquisition of Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge's activity in the January transfer window, the delightful Jason. How are we, Jason?
I'm 3 beers deep, but happy to be here, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's the spirit, big man. That's the spirit. Well, listen, dear listener, if you are listening in and you've not got a beverage in your hand, something's gone horribly, horribly wrong. Dry January, put it to one side. You're in good company. So we're going to try and keep you entertained for however long this deep dive into the wonderfully weird and glorious world of Swindon Town will take us. I mean, listen, guys, it's like I said, we can't polish a turd, but my future of producing football content is long and illustrious. And let me tell you, you don't get a lot of change out of sitting here and moaning for an hour and a half or so. So whilst we're not going to sit here and be happy clappers, I genuinely think that there has to be a certain element of gallows humour about us today. But we're not going to rehash.
Let's be honest, Hannah's. It was Colchester away. It's Colchester away. We know what that means for Swindon Town. Let's go over it.
Listen, I mean, look, you've mentioned Colchester away. I think it's only right and proper that we start there and just get it out of the way. And listen, allow me to start, if I may, because I've literally not had a soul to share my thoughts with. I actually thought for the first 15, 20 minutes, it was a matter of time before we hit the back of the net. I thought we were actually looking okay. I thought the sort of the iffy nature of the early part of our performance, I thought was purely and simply because we were playing against absolutely appalling opposition. I immediately in my head was drawing connections with Scunthorpe of last season as in terms of the level of quality. And I thought all we're going to need to be here is just patient, but bide our time, it's going to come. By that, by the way, I don't mean keep the ball around the 18-yard box and not ask any questions. I just thought we're going to just have to keep going. We're going to have to just be relentless. And eventually, they just will. For me, all ColU were really offering was just like long pumped aimless balls out to the flanks, whether they were long balls down the middle or trying to hit diagonals. They weren't going anywhere. We were mopping them up, and then we were returning back up pitch. Possession game well intact. And then it all just sort of went horribly wrong.
It's one of those, isn't it? It was always going to come from a set piece if we were going to concede. And it's just... I mean, I've not watched the highlights back, but from what I remember, he wasn't marked at all. I think it was zonal marking. He had a free run at the ball, and it was just a case of, if he got a decent connection, guided it back post, it's either going to hit someone or it's going to go in.
And it was back-to-back corners as well, so we knew what they were going to come and do.
Yeah, exactly. I think Hannes is probably right there as well. First 20 minutes, I think Johnny Williams was having him right on toast, wasn't he? And it did look like a matter of time before we'd score.
Well, what you tend to find...
It's one of those games where you wish you had Charlie Austin up front.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it is one of those things that... I mean, I've said many times, I played an half-decent standard of non-league football. I never made it into the pro game, but there is always this sort of risk that when you are playing absolute crap, you can find yourself being lower to their level if you let that happen because, their game was pretty straightforward, wasn't it? It was just try and plug up the midfield, try and turn it into a bit of a war of attrition. It was the old adage. You could see that pitch probably hadn't had any water. It was all a bit sticky, all a bit messy. They were just sort of tanking around without really offering any kind of threat. And then, it was just like, it was a set piece sucker punch where you're just like, well, look, I mean, I've lost count the number of times, we have heard from within the Swindon camp, well, look, we're a team of technicians at the end of the day. League Two is full of these big lumps. So you only had to look at the size of the ColU bench to know that in the latter stages, there was going to be a likely absolute bombardment. So you knew it was going to come at some stage. But, I mean, the biggest thing that was missing for me was what I felt that we'd found in the weeks kind of preceding, which was a willingness to just have a bloody crack. Work the goalkeeper, sting his palms. I mean, listen, we rode our luck against Northampton, all right? The game's far enough away now that we don't necessarily want to kind of go all the way back and dissect that. But we did ride our luck a bit, but we scored two absolute peaches by just getting shots away. For me, it was like we didn't even want to have any shots, lads. I mean, oh, God,
It's also a case of, as well, Scott Lindsay mentioned that they had the oldest squad in the league. And ultimately, regardless of whether or not we're lightweight or we're inexperienced, if you're winning 1-0 with 15 minutes to go and you've got an old head on your shoulders, you're going to shithouse your way through to the end of it. You can see it through. That's the nature of what experienced teams will bring you. So I think the longer the game went on, you're probably finding it tougher and tougher to get, any sort of space on the ball, find gaps. I think we needed a goal for half time really to get back into the game.
But I think as well, when you've got a young squad and they're all coming from 23s football, teams don't play like Colchester in 23s football. So if you have got a young squad like we have, they're going to really struggle in those kind of situations, which I think it is one of our biggest weaknesses. If we go to either a physical team or a team that's like Colchester fighting for their lives, I think we are going to struggle with the squad we've got at the minute.
All right, but look, Max.
The one thing I want to mention,
Look, let's pick up on that young squad piece, because clearly, sorry, Chris, to sort of jump in on you there, but look, it was one of the most excruciating things that was said post-match. And I mentioned it in the opener to this show, that we've suddenly got this kind of dialogue that's come out of nowhere, really, where it kind of feels like, oh, the youth and inexperience card is being played all of a sudden because things aren't going our way. Now, hang on a sec. I mean, let's go through that team, okay? Sol Bryn has been playing all of last season. He had a lengthy stint at Queen of the South. All right, so decent standard of Scottish football, competitive men's football. That's not 23s. Then go across our back line. Angus MacDonald has not been playing 23s. Fraser Blake Tracy has not been playing 23s. Romeo Hutton has not been playing 23s. A possible argument for Marcel Lavinier. And then move into the midfield. Ellis Iandolo has not been playing 23s. You can argue there's possibly an argument for Ronan Darcy, but he was frozen out at Bolton and then found himself playing football in Scandinavia. I don't believe that you can count him as playing in 23s. Then let's start talking about people like Luke Jeffcott. Let's talk about Tyree Shade. These are not guys that are playing under 23s football. These are fully fledged professionals. These are not kids. And listen to me ranting. I sound like Tommy Bloody Wright. But they're genuinely not, I already said it. They're not children. But I was baffled when I heard that comment. And I felt just disappointed and let down that, oh, here we go. Here come the excuses. Fundamentally, it was a crap performance. And listen, I'll bring Josh. Josh has tweeted. Good evening to you, Josh. Josh says, Gladwin's interview is a huge contrast to Lindsay's, where Gladwin knows we were shit and admitted it and knows we need to be better if we want to get up, whereas Lindsay just made excuses. It's kind of my point. Listen, I know it's difficult, and I know the manager's taking a battering, but, I don't want to be hearing about, viruses. I don't want to hear about injuries. I just want someone to turn around and go, you know what? That was absolutely appalling and there's no excuses. I mean, listen, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but do you think it was maybe because he kind of used up that excuse just a couple of games prior?
Most likely, yeah, I reckon so. This is the thing. It felt like, as you said, rather than taking accountability, it's reaching for excuses, and that is like the opposite of what you want from your manager. You want someone to front up and say, you know what, guys, ultimately, I'm not the one out there performing on the pitch, but I do take responsibility for every performance that we put out because I'm the coach, I'm the manager, and it's that level of accountability which I personally found a bit concerning post game. As Josh said in that tweet. I don't understand how Hannah's put out. Sorry, how Hannah's. I don't understand how Ben Gladwin put out a more accountable interview than Scott Lindsay after the game. It's kind of wild, to be honest. And don't get me wrong, I completely agree. There were moments in that game where we did look like an outfit that was going to score. There was at one point in the first half where I was thinking, there's no way we're not scoring there. But you can't just gloss over that and then say, we got a long, a young squad, and it just reeks of excuses for me personally.
Yeah, and
it's one of those.
You've
got to find a mix between. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
No, go on, mate. I've got an echo.
I was going to say, it's like I feel like the excuse of young players is you can't use that. Like ultimately, these kids, like, they still have choices on the pitch. They still know how to get past a man, how to pass, all that kind of stuff. It's about what you tell them. And I just feel like we're doing the same thing over and over again. So that it's not that the kids aren't making the right choices on the pitch, which is normally what you say when, it's a young team out there.
Yeah, and like I said, listen, I do understand that we've recruited a few players from the under 23s, and people, but Clayton's injured at the moment. Connor Brown is a young kid. He's not been recruited from 23. He's been recruited from Ireland. He's injured at the moment. Kieran Brennan is reportedly struggling with a virus or injury. There are some of our sort of youngsters out. But look at look, I don't mean to just keep rattling off the names, but again, I'll just repeat: Saidu Khan's not an under 23s, and then you've got the Louis Reed situation. So it's a bit like, I don't know. I'm just not buying it. I'm not. Okay, look, I appreciate you can look at our lineup. You can throw an average age out there, and you can say, look, that's a young guy. Like, what's our average age? What are we? 24, aren't we? So I get that, and I get if you see your average 24-year-old walking down the street, particularly if you're an old guffer like me, you do look and think that's a young man. You know what I mean? That's a young guy, whole life ahead of him, as opposed to mine that's dwindling away before my very eyes. But if you get my meaning, like, I'm really, really sorry. Like, the excuses don't wash. And I'll tell you why the excuses don't wash. Like, who the bloody hell is sitting top of League Two at the moment? Thank you. What's their average age?
24, I think.
Right.
I actually don't know.
I don't think it's far off ours. I know, I looked at it earlier.
So let me guess. The dialogue around East London is all going to be what? Welland's babes, like Welland's whiz kids. Look at this. Like, are they saying? No, they're not saying that. They're just going about their business, steamrolling the way through this league. And let's have another little look at it as well. We keep on having this chat about the fact that our squad has been turned inside out. Like, okay, like, I get that. How many teams in our league have not had their squads turned inside out over the course of the summer to some degree or another? Are you telling me the vast majority of teams in League Two are operating with the same squad they had last year? Like, I don't understand it. I just don't. I don't know.
I think it's an interesting comparison between us and Orient because if you look, if the ages of squads aren't that much different, then you got to look. I mean, yeah, I think it's like Jace was saying about, you look at us and thinking, what are they trying to do? It's obviously something the manager's telling them to do. When you've got Luke Jeffcott up front in his own, pumping balls into him, which are hopeless, and then you hook him at half time, I don't get what that was about either. Because especially when I think he's not. I think Johnny's our top scorer, but I'm sure Jeffcott's second. So I'm not sure what he expected from Jeffcott during that game, because Plymouth fans told us over and over that he's not going to be a guy up on his own, that there's going to be a target man. He's going to be a poacher in the box who'll be feeding off those second chances or rebounds, and we just don't seem to be playing to his strengths at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Max, isn't it? Because it's like I was saying to you earlier. Like, if you look at where some of Jeffcott's goals, some of his, like, look at Grimsby earlier in the season. It was like you say, it was that second ball. It's like, let's have a dig. If the ball comes back off the woodwork, back off the keeper, back off a defender, falls in a bit of space, you're expecting Jeffcott to occupy that space. And you can kind of understand why although they're few in number, the sort of Charlie Austin naysayers are making the points that they are, that, it's all very well and good. Charlie, because I'm a big believer, Charlie's movement is going to open up chances. It'll open chances for him because his movement is just so bloody good and streets ahead of anything else in this league. So it's going to open chances for him, but also for his teammates. But the biggest issue that you got at the moment is that, the sniffer chances, that are going to come from other people's activities. We're just not seeing anyone taking shots.
Yeah, we're not generating. I mean, if you go to the Northampton game, neither of the goals really came from anything like that. Obviously, Lavinia's is just a great strike, and Shades came from, I'm trying to remember rightly if that did come from a save or not.
Yeah,
Shades
rebound,
actually did. Shades, it was a through ball from Shade actually to Johnny Williams. Keeper saved it, and Shade followed up and put it in.
Mm. And again, that's sort of chance you want to be making for Jeffcott. I think Jeffcott will put away a chance like that as well. But I think the thing that's bugged me more is hooking him, because they weren't really giving him a fighting chance to do. What was he supposed to do in that first half against probably the biggest back three in the league? And they basically just stuck 9 men behind the ball whenever we were in possession, and we were just pumping balls in from wide, which we always do, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked for weeks.
To struggle massively against teams who just sort of they're not don't really want to play football. They want to shut the game down. I think about like Gillingham as well, when they went down to 10 men. You know, when they just set up in that low block, two ranks of four, and then just say, all right, try to break us down. It just seems like tactically the only thing that we seem to do is bring it out to the half spaces out wide with like Hutton or someone like that, and just keep spamming those balls into the box. And like that would explain the stats like box entries, yeah, because you're right. You know, if we keep just banging the ball in from the wings, you know, to just an endless amount of bodies in the box, yeah, fine. You know, we are entering the ball into that area, but it just doesn't seem like that tactic is working. And at this point in the season, when it seems like that's what we've been doing for a long time, especially when we've been asked to break down a low block and it consistently hasn't worked, the question is, what's the alternative? You know, and it also almost reminds me of last season with Bengana. One of the biggest criticisms. Sorry, is there an echo there? Oh, I think it's gone. One of the biggest criticisms that we had was that there was no plan B, and like sometimes I do wonder what is our alternative plan in games where it's not really working, when we're giving the ball out wide, pumping it into the box. I just don't see what the alternative is.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the Jeffcott one's a really interesting point, because obviously Jake Wakeling's come on. Jake offers you a lot of dynamism. He's almost like the polar opposite to what you kind of get from Jeffcott. So you can kind of see where the manager's gone with that. It's not like a like for like switch, is it? He's gone for hustle and bustle and energies. Jake nicks the ball off people's toes. You know, he makes things happen. That's clearly what the gaffer's gone for. But the high ball in the box, I mean, that Wakeling's forced a half decent save from their keeper. You know, the general narrative from Andrew Hawes on Saturday, I was watching the game on iFollow and listening to Andrew's commentary, but it was a little bit like you kind of expect a chance like that to be hit in the back of the net if you're expecting to come away from Colchester with some points. Now, part of me was thinking, if that's Jeffcott's head on that, that's it in the back of the net. So again, I mean, listen, it's an unfair point to make, isn't it? But the substitution was made at the end of the day, wasn't it? The ball was slung in the box, and you got to ask the question. You know, it's one of those things. We had a few more tweets in.
Can I, obviously, Mark, can I just go back to the Northampton game here? Because there was a completely different view we had. Look, against the set pieces, Northampton are the best set piece team in the league, and they didn't even look like scoring against us. We defended so well against that. But obviously, and Jeffcott in that game worked so hard and worked his ass off. And then we took Jeffcott and I think Johnny Williams off and brought Hepburn, Murphy and Wakeling on. And the work they did was tremendous. But the frustration there comes from, why was the performance and the work ethic so different in that game to the next one, which was against an inferior team 2-3 days later?
Well, that's what we're here to discuss at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, listen, the difficult part of all of this is that, you know, there's been some very, very interesting sort of and downright disgusting comments made where people have been analysing the game this week. And good evening, Steve. Steve Terrell's tweeted. Steve said, "I still don't feel right about the tagging and abuse of players or club officials. Some of it's been absolutely horrendous." I mean, listen, Steve, I'll echo your point there, mate. Some of the stuff that I've read this week is pretty horrendous. I mean, thankfully, whilst you will find the manager on social media, on Twitter, Scott reliably tells me that he doesn't use his account and doesn't pay any attention to it. And I hope he's being sincere, because yes, to say that lines have been crossed this week is probably an understatement. It's fair to say. And listen, I just want to make sure that everyone's absolutely clear on where we stand, and we've been consistent about this. You know, this for me tonight, this isn't about, you know, any personal agenda. This is a footballing opinion that you're hearing now. At the start of the season, when, you know, there was a section of our fan base losing its mind after pre-season, you know, I was the first to come out and say, no, hang on a minute, I'm giving this manager 10 games minimum. 10 games minimum to show me what he's all about. After 10 games, there were shoots of progress. And you continually saw little snippets of progress every week. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this squad is coming together. And we were obviously speaking to the players on a weekly basis. And the players were saying everything we're seeing out on the training ground is green shoots. Like, we're feeling really bullish. Confidence is really high. We're all believing in each other. And you had lads in our squad that have been part of promotion achieving squads and have played higher up the leagues. And they were all saying the same thing, that they're seeing quality on that training ground that should give us room for optimism. So with that as the backdrop, I've continued to support what I'm seeing out on the pitch. However, approximately 5-6 weeks ago, we started seeing a bit of a plateau. And then unfortunately, the plateau has just turned into a really alarming kind of, almost like a bit of a bite. It's not a slump, because clearly you don't beat Northampton if you're in a massive slump. We are still getting wins, but listen, I mean, promotion has to be, and it seems to have been at the start of the season. The manager said, we're going to have a good time. We're going to play swashbuckling football. We're going to play up through the thirds, and everyone's talking about us getting out of this bloody league. And it seems like that's what we've recruited for as well. And you can't tell me that you go and recruit Charlie Austin because you're gearing up for another season in League Two. So that, for me, as a backdrop, I think says it all. The line of results that we're getting at the moment, and the quality of performances that we're getting, and the entertainment on show at the moment, just doesn't live up to that billing, doesn't it? Does it really? I mean, if we're honest about it, I don't know how you feel about that, Max.
Yeah, well, I've just been looking through our sort of like form over the season, and we had that great period sort of between the 3-0 Sutton, Doncaster, Grimsby up to sort of Mansfield. And there seems to be this turning point at the Stockport FA Cup game where we just stopped scoring goals. So at the moment, we've got 5 goals in our last 9 games, which if you go for promotion, we need to be scoring more. So I mean, it could be as simple as Austin comes in. Well, so I see some saying, well, Austin's going to come in and get you goals. But I think the thing that I've seen from the games I've watched is that the good chances we were generating before seem to have disappeared. And I don't know why that is, because we were generating a lot of chances, especially in that good run we were having sort of September through to October. So they need to figure that out. I think that if they can figure that out and get Austin like scoring right away, and even get him working with Jeff Carr and get him back in the goals as well, then we can. There is still time to turn it around. It's just, do you trust the team? Do you trust the team and the management to get them going again?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Steve STFC's tweeted. Good evening to you, Steve. Steve says, Lindsay said at the weekend, playoffs or there or thereabouts. Steve says, I don't think getting out of this league is important to Scott Lindsay and Sandro. Now, it's an interesting one, because I think if they were, both those chaps are on the show tonight, and of course we're an open forum, they're entitled to come and join us at any point. But if they were on the show tonight, I think they'd both tell you, well, of course, getting out of this league's important to us. Like that remains the aim. I can't help but think that that's the narrative that's got to come out. But herein also lies a bit of an issue, because some of the inconsistencies of messaging now is really starting to kind of grate, and that in itself causes discord, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know who wants to pick up on that, but
I'll butt in there, Hannah's. Just sort of a quote that is not a direct quote, but something that Sandro said in the documentary that's just come out. And this is sort of paraphrasing, so don't take me word for word, but essentially what Sandro was saying was it doesn't really matter about results as long as if we're playing football the right way.
Ellis, I heard that. Listen, I heard that, and I know you've just quoted verbatim, but do we all actually believe that's what Sandro meant, that it's some kind of Freudian slip? Or do you, because I cannot believe a guy with the profile that Sandro's got and the role that he's got at the club would come out and say that and actually mean that, because you can't tell supporters of a football club, especially one as well supported as ours, that we're not gunning for promotion out of League Two. We are talking about, I know the football, listen, I know the Premier League train left the station many, many moons ago, right? And I'm a realist, but let's be honest, there is no way Swindon Town Football Club should be languishing in League Two. And it's only the actions or inactions of previous ownership that have seen us sort of fall into the position we're in now. Now, Sandro's part of a new wave of people that have come in, custodians of our club, that are moving our club forward. There is no way I can believe, genuinely can believe, that he said that and he actually means it. Like, because that...
The thing, Hannah's as well, the problem is that I have that Sandro's been on the show, spoke well. Whatever, his CV talks for itself. He did well at Sky Bet and he's had a successful career in that industry. I just think it's the lack of footballing people that have a voice. And maybe that's just a case of where Sandro said that he's not meant it, but maybe he hasn't got that bit of, nous or experience in the media where he knows how to sort of use his language and how to set a tone. I think the big thing with Charlie Austin coming in, I think, although we get the goals, we should get goals, we should get, the benefits on the pitch. I think the benefits on the training ground, him being around with a mentality that he'll bring, is vital. I think it's even more positive than the playing side of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I tell you what really strikes me, interesting point you were making there about experienced sort of football heads. And I mean, obviously the regular listeners to the show will know that, I've had personal contact with Charlie going back many, many, many years, right the way back to when he first joined the club. And Charlie knows when to turn it on and turn it off. Charlie knows when to be, it's actually the mics are rolling, I'm on camera, I've got to say certain things, or I don't say certain things at the moment. And I think to your point, Joe, I can't help but think that I don't, like I said, I don't believe, or I really hope that that's not what Sandro meant, and that was an unfortunate slip. I hope it was, but even then, I mean, you kind of want someone to come out and just clarify that. Listen, that point's been out there, sort of the point's been made, and that point's been out there and has been getting echoed around the social media. And that's been feeding a discord. The fact that we're talking about it now shows you that people are still concerned about it. So, and we've got, it's not like, the thing is that Sandro is very good at talking to the BBC before the match. It would be good for Sandro to come out and do that ASAP, because clearly we've got until the 14th, until the next game. There's going to be an awful lot more conversations, an awful lot more echoes about that very point, which obviously is going to cause some concern. And yeah, I mean, listen, we've got to be better. We've got to be better with some of that stuff that is coming out at the moment. And I think we've got to be more consistent as well. I mean, I don't think it's a good look when, your director of football is welcoming, a new signing to the club and saying, I'm delighted that I've brought Charlie to the club. And then a matter of hours later, said striker himself is saying thank you to the owner. And that without the owner, that the striker's not going to end up at the club at the moment. I mean, it's, again, if you're a fan, you're looking at that messaging and you're going, well, hang on a minute. Like, where's this coming from? Who's controlling this? Like, how, like, what?
That also hasn't helped the narrative that was set during the negotiations that were going through the rumour mill about, is he part of a certain plan, or like who's driving the deal? And yeah, you got to sort of think about that. I mean, he's not helped himself, I suppose. But again, is that just down to the fact that he's never had this position before? If he's sort of learning, I don't know. I genuinely believe that their heart's in the right place. They're working towards the same goal. Ultimately, has to be to get us out of the division.
Yeah, I think. Hello, James. Good evening to you. James has just tweeted and said, hopefully, and let's just give Sandro the benefit of the doubt in this respect, because as James is saying, hopefully it was just a slip, like when Cristiano Ronaldo told the world he's happy to be playing in South Africa. yes, James. Kind of our point encapsulated perfectly. And we're sending you all our love, tucked down there in Jacksonville. I hope you're well. Right. I mean, listen. Is there anything else that we want to talk about in relation to the abomination that was ColU?
Well, no, not necessarily Colchester, but sort of going back to the point of what Sandro said about it's important that we play an attractive brand of football. Do you boys think that the Northampton game was a pretty game of football? Because in my opinion, I thought it was real scrappy, and I'm not going to lie, I think we were lucky to get 3 points there.
Do you know what? Yes, I can. Do you know? I hate to say this, Ellis. I thought 2-1. How about this for a comment? I thought 2-1 flattered us. I actually thought that the goals were of such quality that it distracted from the. Because I literally sat there. I was already super excited about Tyree Shade's sort of touch and finish. I love the way that he got the ball out from under himself super quick and got his shot off with such power. And I've been watching him in the warm-ups, and he's been consistently doing that. And I'm thinking it's a matter of time. And I know that the guys have been working on the training ground with that particular drill. And to see it come off the way it did was an absolute peach. And then obviously Marcel Lavinier goes striding up the pitch, and we all know what he basically did. Nearly took the goal net, nearly took the keeper the whole 9 yards. It was an absolute beauty. But
Thunder bastard.
An absolute thunder bastard. Yes, thank you. But here's the thing. Genuinely, I was so literally I found there was 2 such breathtaking goals that it was only in the cold light of day the next morning when I kind of sat there and took a look at the performance, and I started thinking, nah, do you know what? I know we were away from home and all the rest of it, but they had 17 shots. They had 8 on target. In my head, whilst I was watching it, I felt that was the level of shots that we had, and the number of shots on target we had, but we only managed the 11 and 4 shots on target. They forced 15 corners, and we only forced the 3. And I've got to tell you, they were. I thought at the end, if that game goes on for an extra couple of minutes, I thought they were odds on for an equaliser. So it's. You know what, Ellis? This is the thing, and people have made sort of similar comments about, Barrow as well, that the Barrow game could have gone the other way. And people keep on highlighting the fact that Sol Bryn is like, odds on player of the season so far this year. And that tells its own story. So there are, it's not like we're being impatient. We have been, me particular, I've been a virtue of patience to the extent that, the show that I host that you wonderful people are listening to, we've been getting called Clembots, and we've been getting called happy clappers. And we've been, I don't know what more we've got to do to, to sort of, like we've all met Scott on a number of occasions. We all think he's an absolutely terrific bloke. Really, really, like, you just look at he's got great coaching experience. The guy's been in and around football for his entire life. There is not a bad bone in that guy's body. And it pained me to see Scott's family getting abused like they were against Crawley. And I shouldn't have to get involved in dragging people's families away from, like, people getting stuck in the way end and things like that. But these are real things that are happening to a thoroughly decent bloke, and I don't like to see it. But I'm kind of, with some of the messaging that has been coming out over the last sort of few weeks, I sort of look at it and go, to what extent has that not been helping Scott? Because, in many ways, he must feel like he's kind of like, like putting his finger on proverbial holes in buckets, because the messaging seems to change quite a lot. To what extent, I'll just put that back to you guys, to what extent do you think Scott's responsible for the messaging that's going out there? Or to what extent do you think he's just working with the cards that he's being played?
You can definitely tell there's confusion with the mixed messages. Even, we mentioned Gladwin earlier. Sandro's coming out there saying different things. Charlie's coming out and saying that he spoke to Clem on different things. Like, it makes you kind of question who's calling the footballing shots at the moment. Like, is Sandro involved in that, or is it all down to Scott? What's the rest of his coaching team saying? It's odd. It is odd.
I thought that was kind of what, like, this was a question that people had earlier on in the season, and like you, Hannes, I was very, very keen to give what I think any manager a fair shot, regardless of how long it took for us to appoint him, or whether people feel like he was a cheap option, whatever. At the end of the day, I wasn't going to judge him until we saw what was going on. People have some concerns, like I said, on people on the sidelines giving different instructions, that type of thing. It just doesn't seem like the whole coaching setup is very unified, and that, to me, that's an issue. You know what I mean? We need our coaching staff to be one unit, all unifying their message and all being consistent with their sort of philosophy and their lessons. And it doesn't necessarily seem that's the way. And if our director of football and our manager aren't on the same page as our owner, then there is an issue there. There is an issue there, and at the end of the day, there's nothing to say that it can't be sorted out. But right now, I've got to say I'm concerned.
I think one of the biggest worries for me, and it's been pretty much that for a larger majority of the season, is how inexperienced our coaching staff are. We would have been better off if we had like assistant manager come in or a first team coach had come in who'd with some football league experience. But we've pretty much brought in a guy just finishing his career who's never coached before, a guy who's never coached at a higher level, to join a guy who's doing his first football league job. I think as a coaching staff, that's not the best option.
What's Tommy Bright up to?
Well,
shouting at Tom Broadbent.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's up at South Shields now, hunting the big man down. Listen, I mean, look, I mean, in many ways, I think when we were at the peak of the whole Happy Clapper accusations and the Clembot accusations, I think I probably fed that narrative by sort of coming at it as a former company director. Right, I look at it from a business point of view. If I took over a company that had essentially been ripped back to its bare bones, so let's say there was someone running HR, but it was all a bit disillusioned. One or two of your sales guys decided to hang on because they couldn't go anywhere else. I had all this new talent I was going to bring into the business to kind of revolutionize it. But, whilst you're going to get gremlins, right? While you're getting the kind of machine up and running again, as you bring your new talent in and you get your business operating again, you're going to get gremlins. You're going to get some mixed messaging. It requires patience on all fronts. It requires fan patience. It requires internal patience. Even depending who you're selling to, obviously from a fan's perspective, I guess that would be us. But the whole piece regards a huge dollop of let's just give people the benefit of doubt. Now, I think that's kind of what we were saying earlier in relation to the comment that Sandro made about results not mattering and it's all about, polishing up players effectively and selling them on. That's not the verbatim quote, I appreciate. But I think I would kind of make that point again. If we're going to really drill into the messaging that's coming out of the club at the moment, I'll caveat that caveat by saying, look, I've got to be honest, I've given it like half a season of patience in relation to that, and I know that things aren't going to be perfect, but like there comes a point where you're going to be saying, listen, we've been sold, our expectations have been set at a certain point and we're underperforming against it, and I've got to make that point again. I'm not going to be accused of not being a real supporter or being a keyboard warrior because I'm offering a football opinion on football performances and football promises that have been made that quite clearly, or expectations that have been set that aren't being met. Like, I'm going to ask those questions. I want to know the answers to them. So, and it sounds like I'm not alone in that respect either. We've had a nice little wave of tweets rolling in. Liam's tweeted. Liam, good evening to you, pal. Liam says, a little observation. Our turn in fortune seemingly coincides with Ellis Iandolo's return to the team in central midfield. Naturally, this won't be the only reason, but unsure what Ellis adds and feels like a player we carry every week. Also missing Fraser Blake Tracy down the left. All right, a couple of interesting points there. Listen, I don't know who wants to pick up on the Ellis observation, because for me, Ellis was first name on the team sheet last season prior to his injury when he was moved into left central midfield, and he had that license to get forward and attack and make things happen. Ellis to me was sublime, and I was begging the management, regular listeners of the show will testify, begging the management not to move Ellis back out onto the left flank. And obviously in pre-season, it seemed that we recruited around that model as well, with Reece Devine coming into the side. And then obviously Devine got injured. It looked like Ellis was going to have to go out and do a shift out there. But then Fraser Blake-Tracy came in as well, because Ellis then got injured. And, and then obviously with the emergence of Fraser Blake-Tracy is anything but just a bolt hole. Ellis has got that opportunity in midfield again, but obviously he struggles, Max. I don't know whether you want to run with that, or Jason, we haven't heard from you for a bit. But I don't know how you guys feel about that, whether you feel that his struggles in the side this season just sort of reflect our own, really. I don't necessarily think Ellis is to blame.
I actually, from speaking from personal perspective at Northampton, I thought he had a very good game at Northampton. And it's no coincidence he had a very good game playing in that position in midfield. And also we're talking about Blake-Tracy there as well. I think Blake-Tracy has been absolutely outstanding playing in the centre of defence, because he gives us that. Because he brings the ball out so well, and whatnot, and obviously we know Lavinia's decent going forward as well. So I don't think we really miss him that much there. But I think the times when Ellis has played at left back, he's been found a bit wanting, and he's not been had his best games there. And it just goes to show that play him in his best position, and we get the best out of him.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's one of those things.
But Liam's pointing to, Ellis sort of being deployed in midfield as, kind of coinciding with our downturn in form. I mean, I don't know, Liam. Listen, I think the problem that you've got is, like, clearly, Ellis had a really serious injury last season. He missed pretty much all of pre-season this year. And I think any pro will tell you, like, if you miss a full pre-season, trying to get yourself back up, you feel like you're always chasing your tail. And you've only got to look at for the older statesmen amongst you, I'll refer us back to the Paolo Di Canio teams. And if you look at just how strong those teams came on in the latter stages of the season, because they just had so much in the tank from pre-season. So I think there's probably a bit of that with Ellis. I think this will probably end up being one of those seasons where it's a bit of a holding pattern. I think it's a little bit harsh to be pointing the finger and saying, he's, but at the same time, I do get it. I mean, the thing is, Liam, like, Swindon fans love a whipping boy, don't we, over the years? And it's sad for me that we always, I say always, we seem to conveniently point to, those sort of steady 6, 7 out of 10 performers as the whipping boys. I mean, we could go, I don't know, I'll give you like examples of people like Michael Pook being a really good whipping boy. Ben Gladwin last season was a really good whipping boy. We love a whipping boy at Swindon. But I'm not, sorry, Liam, I don't mean to just sort of try and blow massive holes in your point. I think it's a point well made, but I personally think it's a bit harsh. So, sorry, were you going to jump in?
It's one of those, Hammers, isn't it? Sorry, mate. Yeah, I was going to say, I think the difference with Ellis this year, last season, he was maybe, when Tomlinson wasn't around or when Tomlinson was injured, he was our best left back. You've now got Blake-Tracy, who's our best left back by a mile. And in midfield, you have Jack Payne out injured for a portion of the season, sort of February, March time, when Ellis came in after Ricky had a couple of games in, did well, and then fell off a little bit. Ellis came into that left-hand side of midfield, did all right, didn't pull up trees, like I say, 6, 7 out of 10. Jack Payne gets fit again, comes back in. I think we've got more players in this season's squad to fit those holes where we need them. I think players like Ronan Darcy, when he's on form, or Saidu Khan, are probably more natural centre midfielders than Ellis is, and look a little bit more composed in that position. I think with Ellis as well, one of my issues is he's very left-footed. So when you play him on the left-hand side of midfield, of a midfield three, ultimately he's always going to try and run down a wing and probably run into, whether that's, I don't know, Wakelin or Shade or Johnny that's down there. You end up, when you play Marcel left back as well, you've got 3 players essentially in the same sort of position, pulling out wide and attacking. I just find it's imbalances. It imbalances the team a little bit.
It's a good point, isn't it? Ellis out wide on the left, because you don't see Ellis skinning the fullback and getting the crosses in, do you? And if you are defending him, as you say, you show him on the inside, don't you? Show him onto his right foot. Because again, like, we as a team don't shoot, let alone irrespective of Ellis. We as a team
I honestly
don't shoot.
couldn't tell you a time where I've seen him use his right foot to any great sort of power. I can't remember him shooting with his right foot or crossing. It's always his left foot. It's always his left foot.
Look, we've
To be fair as well, I think with him, he's only played in midfield for the last 2 or 3 games. When we started this poor run, a lot of it he was at left back, so he's really not in his best position.
yeah, and you know
So,
what? I mean, from the minute I set eyes on Ellis, and this, and we were under the tower clock with a rose in my epaulet. But no, I genuinely thought that Ellis was going to be a wide left, at like, you know, almost like if you think of our current setup, I thought Ellis is going to be wide left of a front three. You know, and this was back when he was first sort of like emerging as a player. I thought, blimey, and I think it was it Exeter away, where it was that amazing jinking run in the Richie Wellens season. Fantastic jinking run and a square ball across the box. I think it was Jerry Yates bundled it in. I can't for the life of me remember who we were playing, but that for me encapsulated what I thought Ellis was going to be all about. But do you know what? In many respects, I'm more than happy to give Ellis a bit of a pass this season, because like I said, for me, you miss all the pre-season, like you're always going to be struggling. But I mean, Ian, we kind of already made this point. Ian Rogers has tweeted us, but we'll say it nonetheless, Ian, just because you've worded it so nicely. Ian's tweeted in saying, Solbrid has saved us from hammerings in the past few games. It's masking over the problems that we currently have, which obviously ties in to the point that we were making earlier in relation to the Northampton game. And PJ's tweeted us. So PJ's making a couple of claims here, alleged as opposed to in the know, PJ, I'm guessing, but feel free to follow up. PJ saying, I do feel bad for Scott Lindsay. In my opinion, Sandro definitely has more to do with the team than we think, and Lindsay is the one who has to take the brown stuff when it goes wrong, while Sandro gets to hide behind his laptop. Well, I mean, okay, it's sort of the point the point we're making earlier, PJ, isn't it? Just a little bit more brutal from your perspective. I mean, it is that point, isn't it, about if things are going wrong for Scott, to what extent? I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily feel that I know Sandro's role at the level of depth where I could say, well, Sandro's got to take responsibility for this as well. You know, everyone's calling for Scott's head. You know, is it right and proper that Sandro should be held responsible as well? I don't know, guys. I mean, look, you know, someone help me out here, but PJ's points are valid, isn't it? PJ's points are valid.
I think so to a point, but I think there's also the argument that Sandro brought in Lindsay at the beginning of the season, and really he was just into post himself. So it was a very hard task to find a new manager coming in as a director of football or whatever your job title is. So I feel like Sandro needs to have a pass to a point. And actually, it's the incumbent in the manager's role that needs to kind of show his mettle, so to speak. Whether Sandro survives if another guy comes in and doesn't cut it, then well, that's a question itself.
Well, look, going back to the Ellis Iandolo point. Dear listener, I would recommend please do jump onto @T_STBL. That's at the St Tom Broadbent Lounge. Ellis has just posted a poll up there, and so far this is all about Ellis Iandolo's ideal position in the eyes of Swindon Town fans. So with 62.5% of the vote at the moment is central midfield. 25% of the vote is left wing, and 12.5% of the vote is left back. So jump on that poll, guys. Let us know your thoughts as to where you think Ellis should be getting deployed, and we'll have more on those polls later. Josh has tweeted us, and Josh is saying, is it just me that thinks that Johnny Williams is wasted out wide? With Austin, I want to see 2 up top, with Johnny just behind. Now, that's also an interesting point. Who of my panel wants to run with this? Do we believe that the result against ColU was just another illustration of us wasting the opportunity that we've got with Johnny Williams in the side? Or do you think it was just Johnny Williams having a stinker?
I'll tell you what, Hannahs, I really want to see the diamond implemented again. We all remember the Mansfield game where where we played that formation, and it worked a treat. And I think sort of Scott Lindsay probably wrote it off after a couple games afterwards where it probably didn't work as well. But especially with Charlie Austin coming in, I would love to see sort of Charlie Austin and Jake Wakelin up top working together. And then just having the diamond allows players like Johnny Williams to come in and just, be more involved in the game.
I mean, the idea of Jake Wakelin, Rashawn Hepburn Murphy, I'd even like to think of. I mean, everyone's going to jump on me now and say they're too similar. But the idea of Luke Jeffcott and Charlie Austin, if you had said, Swindon Town fans, at the start of the season, that at the midway point of the season, your front two are going to be Luke Jeffcott of Plymouth Argyle and Charlie Austin of ex-QPR, Brisbane Roar, Southampton, West Bromwich Albion, and of course, a glorious spell of this parish, you would have bitten my bloody arm off. And it's only Jeffcott's performances so far that have got us kind of thinking, oh, he's only really good for standing in the middle of the 18-yard box and waiting for the ball to drop to him. I don't believe that. And you saw it against Mansfield where he basically ran the game from the front. I'll tell you what, I've got a feeling Jeffcott and Austin could be something quite special because it's just it's the outlier that nobody's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, well, it would make sense if we're intent on, if we're intent on pumping balls into the box and we're bringing in Charlie Austin, surely great, put him up front with someone. You've got an extra body in the box, and we know that Charlie's good in the air. So whether he's heading chances in or he's knocking it down to someone like Jeffcott, or even Wakeling would do well in that position as well, chopping onto chances, and it makes perfect sense to put two up top, in my opinion.
I also, from that, I don't know if you would have seen it as much as on iFollow, but the amount of work that Jeffcott put in at Northampton was exemplary. He run his ass off, absolutely run his ass off, and he didn't get much service, but that sort of, he's not just a poacher. He will work.
Is Luke Jeffcott a young Charlie Austin, and is Charlie Austin a Billy Painter?
Well, quite possibly. I'll tell you what, because the point that Chris is making is a really valid one. With running and occupying of positions and whatnot, it's really, really, really underrated because you don't necessarily kind of look and understand that by literally taking up a certain position, running to a certain spot, you're creating space for those to operate around you. And it just so happens that those around him aren't making the most of that space. So it's an interesting point. You put someone up top with him that knows how to essentially make the most of the space that's being created and can link up with him. And if you don't believe me, let's go back to, appreciate this is a very, very long time ago. So this is one for the old guffers out there. But we talked last week, Chris, didn't we, about Duncan Shearer and Steve White? Duncan Shearer and Steve White were, the pair of them didn't score an awful lot of their goals from outside the 18-yard box, did they?
No, they didn't. And that's the thing is, I actually think from the games they both play, I think Jeffcott could be so effective with Austin. I do think we would need to tinker our formation and whatnot, but that's a point that we might be discussing later on.
Yes.
But I do think that Jeffcott could be so effective with Austin and learn so much off him, because it's like we said, we saw what he did at Mansfield where he drops deep, and he's not just a poacher. There's so much more to his game than that, and we saw that element when he, with no service, what he offered to the team on what night was it? Was it Thursday? Well, at Northampton anyway. But I thought he was, for the 70 minutes it was on there, I thought he was absolutely outstanding. The work he did, he run everywhere, and he's the type that he could learn so much off Charlie.
But seriously, I can't help but just reiterate what I said about 2-3 minutes ago. If you'd said to me at the start of the season that we could be playing in a diamond with a front three of Charlie Austin, Luke Jeffcott, and Johnny Williams, I would have said, bloody hell, like, you're having me on. Now, I do appreciate that, best laid plans and all that, but at the same time, I still, I'm a big believer in, form is temporary, class is permanent. At some point, these players that we're talking about are too good to just continue to be pap, like those three in particular. So from my perspective, I think Charlie does change a lot. Is he the big fix? No. Are we some of the commentary I'm hearing about Charlie's impact on our club moving forward from a performance point of view, I think it's probably being a little bit overcautious. And I think we're being overcautious because we're really quite scared of spoiling the legacy. And I think there's also a kind of feeling or a concern that, Charlie maybe isn't going to play. I mean, Andy Footner has tweeted, Andy, good evening to you. And he asked the question, do you think Charlie's going to start on the 14th? And what happens if he's sub or worse? So obviously there's a lot of chatter at the moment going out about packing the ground for Grimsby. I think, to be honest, Andy, Charlie starts on the 14th, to be totally frank. If he doesn't start, I think he's going to be seeing a lot of that game. I can imagine being introduced at half-time, irrespective. I just think he's too big a player, mate. Too big a player. And I think we're in such a situation coming off the back of that god-awful Colchester United game that we just need a catalyst. So if you're Scott Lindsay, you're a very, very, very brave man if you don't play him.
I also think they're going to mark that with Charlie coming in, it would I don't want to use foresight, but it would sort of like suggest that we sort of move to a different formation, because I think the formation we're playing at the moment, we probably don't utilise our players as best we can. And I think to get the best out of Charlie, we need someone up there with him. And I think, as Ellis said earlier, the diamond or something similar is how we're going to get the best out of him.
Well, I'm game. I'm certainly game. A little update on the Ellis Iandolo poll. It seems like the majority of you are going with Ellis's. Left back and left midfield, left wing are pretty much tied in the mid to upper teens. And central midfield, he's streaking away with it. So everyone is clearly of the opinion that he's a central midfielder. Jason Lane has tweeted. Jason, good evening, mate. Jason says, Boxing Day, ladies and gents, Ellis put 3 balls into the box with his right peg. Good spot, Jason, to be honest, because I hadn't even noticed that. But ultimately, did we score off the back of any of them? And there's the big question. Marcus has tweeted. Hello, Marcus. Marcus says, I don't think Scott Lindsay knows Ellis's best position, to be fair. I think part of the problem there, Marcus, is that, I don't know. I mean, I'll put it back to you guys with Ellis. The biggest sort of issue that you've got, I keep on saying, like, it's the same sort of problem with Tyree Shade. Some of these guys, like, you want to give them a position, you want to like give them a run in that position, and I don't want to sort of start talking about Ellis and then immediately start talking about Tyrese and go off down that tangent. But I would be very, very surprised if at the start of the season, part of Tyrese's sort of tempting to our club, if you look at the way that he was being played, I'll be very, very surprised if it wasn't a case of, right, this guy's going to come in, he's going to play wing back, it's going to be a regular thing, he's going to finally get an opportunity to settle down in a spot and gun it. I mean, but Tyrese has been used in the middle, he's been used as a central striker, he's been used as a winger, he's been used as a wing back, and the same applies with Ellis, left back, left wing, left centre midfield. So I think part of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. We do have an embarrassment of riches, which is funny given the form that we're in, but we have an embarrassment of riches with these kind of midfield technicians, don't we? So you kind of see how Ellis gets pushed out a little.
One thing I say about that, though, Mark, and about him not knowing his best position, we obviously we had a conversation with Scott a couple of months back, and we actually put that question to him, and Scott told us that he felt that Ellis's best position was left centre attacking midfielder. So, and that's the position we all think is his best. But it's from injuries and whatever reasons, his versatility has pushed him elsewhere. So I think Scott does know his best position, but it's just that his versatility and injuries and whatnot has forced him sometimes into different positions.
Yeah, that's I guess that's my point, really. It's going to be very, very difficult for Ellis to get into a rhythm, get those sort of like those instincts on the pitch, because, I mean, well, so weirdly, Chris, and I'm going to, I appreciate I am comparing very, very, very different levels of football here. But when I was playing at my pomp between the sticks, I had a period of about 18 months where I fell out of love with the game. I had a couple of medical issues that forced me out of, just forced me to be performing at not on my best level. And when I came back, I struggled for form, I struggled for fitness, and I couldn't break back into the side. I got talked into turning out for a mate's team to go and play out on pitch, just to kind of get some mileage in my legs. And I said to him, right, just throw me up front. And weirdly, although I had a goalkeeper's mindset, I ended up scoring an absolute ton of goals. Now, one, I was well below the level that I was playing when I was a goalkeeper, so that's part of it. But two, it was about my movement, and I knew exactly where to put myself to hurt a goalkeeper and to hurt defenders, because I've been so used to setting myself up or setting my defence up to prevent that from happening, that for me it was a little bit, I felt like I was the fox in the chicken coop. So to my point about Ellis, it's a little bit like you kind of want, it must be so hard for him to 1 minute be a left central attacking midfielder, or even if he's given a disruptor and a breaking up play in central midfield, to then find himself out on the wing where the emphasis is like get down the flank and then get back up the flank, like, and defend and then get forward and defend and get forward, or play as on the left of a front three, where it's about, right, stay up there, get crosses in, lap over with your, with the left midfielder and indeed the left fullback. Like, those are really different briefs. The poor bloke's head, it must be spinning. He must not know whether he's coming or going. And like I said, off the back of no pre-season, I think, you've got to be giving Ellis like a little bit of, benefit of the doubt. So Terry Ayres has tweeted, Terry, good evening. The fact that nobody knows Ellis's best or strongest position says it all. I'd rather have a natural central midfielder or left back, not someone who's barely okay at both. I don't know, Terry, that's a bit harsh. I don't put that back to my panel. How do you feel about that?
I don't disagree with that.
Well, like I said, last season, Ellis was one of the first names on the team sheet, wasn't he?
Yeah, I just think it's one of those ones now where we've got specialist players in these positions. And look, anyone that's stayed at a football club or stayed at our football club for as long as Ellis has, which is probably nearing now 10 years, you've got to have respect for that, and you've got to appreciate the work that he's put in for the football club. He was one of the players that stuck around in the summer where the takeover took place. He has shown a lot of loyalty to us, but I still don't know, after all this time, what his best position is. And I think, it's been a while now. We've got players like Blake Tracy, who's come in on loan from Burton, who has absolutely smashed it at left back. You've got players like, Ben Gladwin, who this season has been an absolute revelation. I mean, we know what Ben Gladwin's about anyway. He's a centre midfielder that can get across the pitch. He covers both boxes. He scores goals for us, and that's what he's done for us this season. You've got Johnny Williams, who I think is the best player in League Two, who, again, maybe you can say he's not his best position is, whether it's a 10, whether it's an 8, whether it's an 11. But I think we've got better players in the areas that Ellis would operate on the field. I think, don't get me wrong, he's a great squad player, and he certainly does a job. But just for me, it's one of those ones. I just think he doesn't specialise in any areas that we're missing out of.
Yeah,
I think he's a victim of his own success from last year, though, isn't he? I think the one area of the pitch we really struggle with at the moment is the left-hand side. So Ellis, being a left-footed player, gets put out there. Williams, is Williams a winger? I don't think so. FBT's playing centre-back at the moment. We've got a right-back playing left full-back at the moment. So that whole left-hand side is dysfunctional for me. And Ellis can kind of do one of a number of things. So can Williams. So can, Fraser Blake Tracy. But really, are they in all the best positions? I don't think so. We need to buy another left wing back, if you ask me, and we need probably to buy a left winger or change formation.
I think the thing is, Jason, if I asked you, if I said, right, would you want Blake Tracy or Iandlo left back? Who would you pick?
Oh, Blake Tracy, 100%.
There you go. So if you want Iandlo or Williams left wing, who are you picking?
Well, I mean, that's the tricky, because I don't want either to be there.
Okay, Williams or Iandlo left centre mid?
Williams.
Yeah, I think we've got better players at left wing as well. I think I've not said him much there this season, but Tyree Shade, I think, would be a good left winger. And I also think that Lavinia can probably play that position as well.
Well, listen, I mean, he's been working.
I know, but we have a left winger in the
He's
squad.
been working that dynamic, the gaffer, hasn't he? Like, he's come up with this formula with the three of them down the left-hand side, which is Ellis, Johnny Williams, Marcel Lavinia. Now, Lavinia's right-footed. Ellis is left-footed. Who else? What have I forgot? Johnny Williams as well. Johnny's what? Johnny's right foot. Johnny's left. Johnny's a lefty, right? So,
I think so.
Okay, so you've basically got interesting options for cutting in or going wide. So you should, if they're getting that right, if they're getting that kind of fluidity down the left-hand side right, that should, given the calibre of player we're talking about, bearing in mind, we're talking Marcel Lavinia, who's got a European appearance for Tottenham Hotspur under Jose Mourinho and has played a decent youth standard, both for Spurs and Chelsea, before making the leap up to us, all right? So the guy's got pedigree. You've got Johnny Williams, who's just come back from the World Cup in Qatar. Enough said. And you've got Ellis Iandolo, who last season first name on the team sheet, one of once he settled into midfield. So you've got a calibre of player on the left hand side there that should be able to open up most League Two sides. What I would suggest in terms of giving them a bit of a break is 2 games in, 3 games in to trying that system. That does take a little bit of thinking. Like, you've got 3 players that have got to be in perfect sync. They're not going to get in perfect sync off the back of 2 or 3 games. It's going to take a while. But this goes back to one of my other issues with, we have swapped and changed our systems. Like in pre-season, we were playing 3 at the back. It appears that we recruited for 3 at the back, or 5 at the back, depending on which way you want to call that. And then we've ended up going to a flat back 4 at times. Then we've had a 4-3-3. Then we've had a diamond as well. And it kind of feels like, I don't know. I feel like I'm arguing with myself, because last season we were banging on about not having a plan B. This season it would appear that we've got a plan B, C, D, and E, but it's just none of them are really kind of delivering the goods, are they? So we're all kind of crying out for a settled system, which is kind of what we were arguing against last year, which, welcome to the wonderful world of football fandom. Where are we going wrong? But look, we've had a bunch more tweets in relation to this. So good evening, Ash. Long time no speak, pal. Ash just said Ellis is bang average, and that's it. He's not in our best 3 midfielders. Well, kind of, again, sort of brutally put, Ash, which I think is pretty typical with the kind of barometer as to the no-nonsense Swindon Town fans' attitude at the moment in terms of analysing our players and our performance at the moment. Martin Nolan's tweeted. Martin, good evening. Martin says, at least we have a top-class keeper. And Luke has also tweeted, hello, Luke. It's always a pleasure to read your wonderful words. And Luke's saying, I find myself unusually agreeing with Ian Rogers. There's nothing like a good crisis at your club to bring all the factions together, is there? League position is flattering due to Bryn and Fraser Blake Tracy. They are an absolute priority for us for January. We need to build this second half of the season team around Austin to give him every chance. Charlie could well unlock Jeffcott's talent, which is what we were talking about earlier. And Luke goes on to say, an experienced coach would surely be able to play to our strengths. Jeffcott excited us all when he was signed and he hadn't even started firing. Surely going all out to get our man, we should be giving him everything he needs, not leaving him isolated up top, which again kind of ties into what we were saying earlier. The points are continuing to roll in sorry, bear with me. A couple of these are, sorry guys, keep them clean is all I would say, if you can. So Dean McMackin, Dean, good evening. Dean has said, we keep changing everything apart from the obvious problem. The midfield is the biggest problem. It offers nothing defensively or attacking wise. That's an interesting point that Dean's making there, guys, isn't it? I don't know who wants to have a run at that. And I appreciate we've drifted. We're not just talking about ColU at the moment. We are now talking on a general level. But Dean's made an interesting point because, I don't know, you see, at the start of the season, I actually thought that Ben Gladwin presented us with a glorious problem. Because Ben Gladwin, I'm going to contradict my right honourable friend Joe Vincent and tell you that Ben Gladwin is the best footballer in League Two by a country mile. The problem that you had with Ben Gladwin last season was Ben Gladwin last season was 5 kilos heavier and was struggling with fitness compared to the Ben Gladwin we've got this year. Ben Gladwin this year, he's such a different kind of player. It's a little bit like, with Ben Gladwin, it's a little bit like how Tottenham fans used to talk about Glenn Hoddle in midfield, that you need to build a team around a Ben Gladwin. And, you know, and part of the problem with Ben Gladwin emerging is I genuinely think it caused a knock-on effect that affects Ellis, it affects Johnny, it affects Reedy to an extent because of the way that Gladwin is playing. Last season, we were rotating Willow and Gladwin, weren't we? This season, we're playing them both together. At times, it's looked brilliant. But at the same time, results when they're both in the team, you know, recently, it's not looking great, is it? So
I think it was a conversation we had at the start, wasn't it? Oh, go on, Chris.
I was going to say, I think the question we've got here, Mark, is though if you take our midfield and all our midfielders, and then if you were to take 10 Swindon fans or however, all the 7 we've got here, and ask them to pick their best midfield, whatever system you want to play, they would all pick a different setup. And I think that comes back to what our problem is. We don't know what our best midfield is and the best system is.
Well, Chris, allow us to unpack that very conundrum. Because on the 14th, we want to be packing out the county ground for the visit of Grimsby, all right? We've joined forces with the official supporters group, with the Low Strangers, with the Fools Rush In guys, with the Trust, and obviously the club themselves, to really try and bang the drum and make sure, obviously, the Stratton Bank's going to be open. We want to pack the ground for arguably one of the most historic homecomings that you will see in your fandom. If you're sitting there off the back of the last couple of results and you are umming and ahhing about whether or not you're going to turn up for Charlie's homecoming, give your head a wobble, because if you're excited about his signing, the buzz on the day of Charlie actually turning up at the county ground in the red kit, coming out on the pitch, it is going to be, and I'll tell you what, you won't want to be the person that misses his a goal on his second debut. So listen, for me, it's a phenomenal opportunity. If we can't pack the county ground for Charlie Austin's return, seriously, we need to give ourselves a bloody good looking at. Now, appreciate we've got a whole host of things that we've discussed already, but with the help of the wonderful Ellis, we are going to we're going to try and make this as interactive as we can. So all of you lot listening, keep an eye on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge thread, because we're going to ask a bunch of questions. We're going to put a bunch of polls out there, and we are going to come up with what Swindon fans think we should be doing to get the most out of Charlie Austin on the 14th and thereafter. So Ellis has put a little trial poll up already. And the first poll is, where are you going to be putting your money this window? Goalkeeper, defence, midfield, or forwards? But where we're going to be going with is, Ellis is about to put a poll up with your chosen formation. So we talked a lot tonight. So from the 14th, what formation are you going to go with? Are we going to go, I'm guessing, Ellis, we're going to go 3-5-2, 5-3-2, 4-4-2 diamond, or 4-3-3. I'm guessing. Appreciate we could do a lot more, but it's Twitter polls, right? So we've only got 4 choices. So I'll go through those again. 3-5-2, 5-3-2, 4-4-2 diamond, or 4-3-3. Is everyone happy with that, my glorious poll?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, all good.
All right, Ellis.
Very happy.
So Ellis, when you're set, throw that up there, pal. And everyone that's listening in, get voting. So if you're unsure on how Twitter polls work, it really is as simple as that. You're going to see Ellis posting up on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge thread your choice of formations. Just literally simple as just click on and vote. And
I'd be interested to see as well, if you've got an explanation for a certain formation, drop a comment, tell us why you think that formation's best or why we should go for it. Maybe the best one might be able to win some SCFC merch.
Yeah, maybe. I'll tell you what, I will get you a hand-signed Dan design print of your choosing, and if your comment's particularly good, you might even get a limited edition Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge hoodie for your troubles. But make it good. If it's crud or abusive in any way, shape or form, you're getting absolutely niche, as the teenagers in my house would say. So we've got the first polls up. Well done, Ellis. It says, what will be your chosen formation then from the 4 teams? So please go to the thread and choose either a 3-5-2, a 5-3-2, 4-3-3, or a 4-4-2 diamond. And I can tell you that the early votes appear to be going for the 4-4-2 diamond. So keep adding away. No, Dean McMackin, I'm afraid you cannot add a formation, please. Although you can put it in the comments if you so wish. But Dean, you've already got a hoodie, so I don't know what it is you're trying to achieve. but I admire your commitment. So yeah, share that around, guys, as well. So as well as getting your votes in, please hit retweet, please hit like, get it out there, out and about. Once we're so we'll keep debating this amongst the panel, because once we've set on formation, we'll debate this for a good sort of like 5-10 minutes. And then what we're going to do, we're going to move through each of the positions. Once we've got a settled formation, we're going to move through each of the positions. I'll Dean with your 4-2-3-1. Come on. All right. He's got a point.
Can we just have that if Dean is suggesting the 4-2-3-1, that's also been suggested by one of our regular contributors as well.
Gabs with us.
Gabs has also suggested that.
No, listen, it's a really, really good point. But I just think if we were going to go with a 4-2-3-1, I think we would have done that already. I just don't think Scott's not gone with that at any point this season. So I can see why we would go with that. But I just don't know whether it's realistic. Just give.
It's basically a 4-3-3 anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're talking my language, Max Springer. You've just given out the old John Smiths, haven't you? Have it straight out the park.
Just say as it is, mate. It's a 4-3-3.
The Dean McMackin Gabs loving that's taking place on our thread right now is an absolute. It's disgusting. It's creepy.
Get a
room, gentlemen, indeed. Josh has tweeted, he says 4-2-2 diamond allows Johnny to explore so much space and also allows Hutton and Lavinia to push forward and get the balls into the box for Charlie Austin and another striker. It gives the midfield behind Williams to sit in front of the defence and control the game. I'm inclined to agree with you, Josh, to be honest with you. Will Sugg, hello, Will. Will's also tweeted 4-4-2 diamonds is an absolute no-brainer. We were frighteningly good at Mansfield with it, and then Scott Lindsay seemingly dismissed it without thoroughly forevermore. I think I'm ready.
I think going off that, Hannah's, I think Scott Lindsay was really sort of quick to dismiss the 4-4-2 diamond. Like after the Mansfield game, tried it out in a couple of games. It didn't really pay off as well as it did in the Mansfield game. But I think the key with it, I think you need to have a solid defence. You need to have a solid back four. And it sort of didn't help that we had injuries coming in, obviously with Clayton out. I think McDonald was out at the time. It doesn't help when your back four is constantly changing. So hopefully with a bit of security coming in at the back, that could possibly help with that.
A few more points about 4-4-2. So Ash has come back in, and Ash has said 4-4-2 diamond. Reed or Khan sitting, overloading fullbacks to pack into midfield areas. Jeffcott needs a partner if he's to stay. Williams in the jam role. Yeah, I think we're kind of lining up quite nicely here. And Jason has tweeted us a beautiful graphic where he's gone with he's gone with a 4-3-3 where he's gone Blake Tracy, Clayton, McDonald, Hutton as your back four, Khan and Reed sitting in, Williams sat in front of them, and then Wakelin, Austin, and Darcy playing Wakelin down the left, Darcy on the right.
Where's Gladwin?
There's no Gladwin. He's not having him. So
I don't know about that one, Chief.
Well, we'll go back to Ellis's formation poll. But listen, I think it's fair to say that we are going to press ahead with the 4-4-2 diamond. It's what the punters want. So currently at the moment, I mean, the sample size isn't quite at your minimum level yet, but with 34 votes down, we've got 76% of the vote saying they want a 4-4-2 diamond, 6% of the vote going 4-3-3, nobody asking for 5-3-2, and nearly 18% going with 3-5-2. So last couple of minutes, guys, get your votes in if you're not already. Go on to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge's thread. Please hit vote. hit retweet, hit like, get it out as many Town fans as possible, and we will start to move on to positions. The first of which I think is going to probably be the easiest of the picks tonight, which will of course be between the sticks. Now, the only caveat, as the numbers are starting to fly up on the votes, which is good. The only caveat with Sol Bryn, my dear panel, is there's been a lot of talk about Sol Bryn hanging around in January. Obviously, he is an absolute priority signing for us, re-signing for us, or protect his position at the club, I should say, rather than re-sign, because he's already here. But there is a risk that we're going to lose him, isn't there? Because he's only on loan, and we've been here before. So we've had assurances from Middlesbrough. So I think that would be the only thing that might make it Sol Bryn's sort of position at the club debate worthy as we move on to the next little vote. So Ellis, I think for this poll, it's going to be quite straightforward. It's going to be your choice of goalkeeper in a 4-4-2 diamond, which will be obviously we've got Sol Bryn, we've got Jack Copland, we've got another loanee, and I guess another permanent goalkeeper. I guess let's have a little bit of fun with that one.
I don't think do we need the goalkeeper poll?
Yes, of course we do.
Sol
Bryn. I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to ask this question, but you're stealing my thunder, co-host.
Sorry,
no.
Go on.
No, listen. So for me, do we spend money on another permanent goalkeeper when we've got young Jack Copland, who's really highly rated? Do we just continue to give him a run? But the risk, of course, is what happens if we lose Sol, because that's not only does Sol cast a very, very, very large shadow, but that's a lot of pressure to heap on the shoulders of a very, very young lad. Well, he's not, I'll say very, very young.
If you've got an 18-year-old Jack Copland who he's not 6 foot tall, he's 5 foot something. In League Two, that's a massive risk. You've got Northampton, 18 shots being peppered across your goal. You've got absolute giants running in on you from corners. It's just it's a single point of failure, I think.
So, yeah, but
what's Lee Camp doing nowadays?
We also played most of the season with our backup goalie being completely untested and not even risked in the Pizza Cup. So is having Copland on the bench really that much of a difference of a risk?
Well, I think Wardy played most of the Pizza Cup games, and they played the Carabao Cup game.
No, Bryn played them all.
Ward definitely played against Palace, and then Ward played against Walsall.
Ward played against Walsall. Ward played against Walsall because he made a massive error for one of the goals. Ward definitely played at least. He played the August games, but since then, Chris is right that Bryn has played all of the remaining 2 Papa John's games.
So can we just clarify then? Now, let's just put the poll live for the goalkeeper selection. We know that Sol Bryn is going to win this hands down. I guess have a little bit of fun with it. If you want to hit new transfer or loan goalkeeper, that is to sign someone else to support, back up Sol Bryn on the basis that we're a little scared of the risk of losing him. And also, it's a little bit unfair to heap so much pressure on the shoulders of young Jack Copland, who's obviously hugely rated moving forward. But that's just, I mean, at some point you got to throw goalkeepers in, right? At some point.
Well, the one thing there is you cannot use 2 loan spots on the goalkeeper. So if we are going to sign a new goalkeeper, it's permanently, not on loan.
This is the goal that we're getting into, Chris. This is why we get you involved, mate. This is why you earn the big bucks.
Yeah. Mate, you would take a National League goalkeeper who's out of contract next year. If he's a 35-year-old goalkeeper playing in the National League who is maybe sitting on a bench in the National League, genuinely, I'd probably take him. Like, I'm not looking for a David De Gea. I'm looking for whatever Tom Heaton is at Man United.
This is why you bring back Lee Camp, because he's a free agent.
I love Camp.
I wouldn't be against it.
I love a bit of Camp.
Because he's not gonna expect to play. I think he'd be good just to have about. I mean, he knows the club. I know he's in a 10 months time, but we're not expecting him to play. It's just someone you'd rather have him being the one sat on the bench not playing, so that Copland can at least play somewhere. Whether I don't know if he can still play with the under 18s, but you'd rather have him playing football week in, week out, because obviously the under 18s play on early Saturday afternoon, don't they? So I'm guessing he's just not playing for them at the moment because of his first team commitments.
I'll tell you what.
League Camp's good as well to have with Sol Bryn, bit of experience to sponge off of. I think Stevie Bender probably benefited off of having Luke McCormick around the place.
Yeah, but then
100%.
is in all seriousness, is the camp, is Campy coming in and bench warming going to offer you any more than Mildy sitting there bench warming does? You know, as an emergency stopgap. You know, because the one thing that, you know, even though Mildy might not be as lightning quick down around his ankles as maybe he used to be when he was a svelte young man, Mildy's still going to be able, with his height, you know, his reading of the game, he'll still be able to set up his defence. He will still be able to come and pluck crosses. You know, worst case, like in a proper glass tube break, you know, break in the case of emergency. I'll tell you what's really interesting though, looking at the votes as they're rolling in on the goalkeeper poll, albeit I was going to say that, but they are changing now. Sol Bryn, obviously everyone's going, look, you know, Sol Bryn clearly is a priority for signing him. The Copland versus a new transfer or a lone goalkeeper was pretty much split down the middle. Keep those votes going in though, guys, because we want to try and make this as realistic as possible. At the moment, it's just starting to lean towards needing to bring a new goalkeeper in, as opposed to just relying on Jack Copland. Obviously, everyone's lumping in on Bryn, but the real debate in that poll is to whether you stick with young Copland or whether you twist and take a little bit of pressure off the kid. And it's not, obviously, we're not casting aspersions as to, you know, how he's, you know, what he's bringing to the table, because he's clearly highly rated moving forward. Andy, while we're talking goalkeepers, Andy's tweeted again. Andy, good evening again, mate. Andy saying, were any of you gents amongst the deserters when Bryn started in front of Wardy at the start of the season? Yeah, I mean, Andy, that was appalling. I stand in the town end, Andy, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Where, you know, Mildy had to come over and have a word with certain sections of the town end for booing Sol Bryn after the opening day defeat against Harrogate, first home game of the season. Yeah, Bryn was getting some ironic cat calls from the town end during his warm up, and yeah, how times have changed, Andy. I'm pleased to say I wasn't part of it. What about my glorious panel? Own up. Were any of you lot were having a little boo?
No chance.
Not having a boo. I remember before Harrogate, I think I was very apprehensive about him starting. I thought, because I suppose it's similar to throwing in like an under-18s keeper, right? Because he was a complete. No, not with Bryn actually, because he played in Scotland, didn't he? But even so, he was still a bit of an unknown entity. But I'm happy to be proven wrong, because I think I said it when we were reviewing the squad. I gave him an A-star. He's probably won us more points on his own than anyone else. I think in the say it's something like goals above this expected conceded. He's top of the list for keeping us, basically saving us and keeping us in games all through the season.
You know what I think, Max? Do you know what I think, Max? Right now, Andy's just basically written Max Springer. You're right at the top of the hit list. He's going to be sending that off to Mildy, mate. So yeah, basically, Andy, does that answer your question? Max was definitely booing him.
I wasn't at the county ground that day. I lived too far away.
Sorry, Mike, interrupted you, fella.
That's all right. Real quickly, I just wanted to say, do you remember before Wardy left the county ground as well? He was actually defending Sol, even though he'd literally just taken a spot ahead of him. He was shushing our fans and then telling them, you know, give him a chance and be respectful. So I know he's left the club, but I just wanted to highlight that and say absolutely fair play, massive well done to Lewis Ward for supporting the squad, even when it personally was to his detriment.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show. I've got to say, like when Wardy came on the show earlier in the season, I mean, at no point did he give any kind of indication that, you know, that there's a prospect of him leaving. And for me, it's a real shame that he has gone, because obviously this poll will be a hell of a lot more interesting if we were having the Lewis Ward or Sol Bryn debate going into January. But having said that, bearing in mind I am a big fan of having two goalkeepers going at it hammer and tong. I can honestly say I don't think there's been a detrimental impact on Sol Bryn's performances this season, although he's only really got himself and his own standards to motivate him. And I think a lot of that you've got to give Mildy credit, because Mildy must be absolutely on him and properly brutalising him for him to keep that level of motivation. Right, so how are we getting on with the poll? Well, so the poll's pretty conclusive at the moment. As we say, we're going with Bryn. It's, again, for those of you that have just sort of tuned in, we're not having nonsensical, are we going to be dropping Sol Bryn for Copland? That's not the debate. We all know that you're going to go with Bryn. That's why he's in there, and that's why he's going to be getting all the votes. The real debate in this poll is whether or not it's stick with Jack Copland or bring in another lone goalkeeper. And at the moment, another lone goalkeeper is just tipping the scales a little away from Jack. So again, just to reiterate, that's not casting any aspersions in young Jack's department. That's probably us not wanting to throw him at the wolves so early in his fledgling career.
As I was saying, just with bringing another lone goalkeeper to back up to have two lone goalkeepers, to me is just mad. If we're going to bring in another goalkeeper, then we go and sign one.
Yeah, he's got
someone out of contract, someone at the back end of the career. I just cannot see the logic in signing two lone goalkeepers.
Yeah, you got to get the right kind of mentality through the door, though, Chris, I guess. But look,
yeah, I'm not necessarily saying. I know I mentioned Lee Cavitt was a bit tongue in cheek, but I think someone in that mould would be ideal, just to have in the squad and have as a backup option.
All right.
Yeah, I'd rather have Steve Hale than Lee Cavitt.
Someone like a Frankie Fielding, that would do.
Yeah, well, do we have to? All right, listen, let's move it along. So we're going to go left backs now, Ellis. I hope that you're still listening in and you're setting up the next poll. So
I am indeed.
Just to reiterate, mate, as you know, we're going with the 4-4-2 diamond, and we're going to be going with the left back position. Now it's okay. So we've already had the Ellis conversation. We've got Fraser Blake Tracy in the door. We've got Marcel Lavinier. And we've also got Reece Devine through the door, who, poor old Reece, doesn't seem to be able to catch a break in relation to not being injured. But we've also got Tom Clayton as well. So are we going to go at this on the basis that Fraser Blake Tracy is now going to be regarded as a central defender? So therefore, the debate is all going to be about Devine. Lost my train of thought. Devine.
I think the debate here is are we picking this team on the basis that everyone is fit, or what the current situation?
No, let's go with everyone is fit. So we've got.
Oh, okay. So if everyone is fit, I think Blake Tracy has to be considered a left back as well.
Yeah, because I think for me personally, I'd have Blake Tracy at left back if everyone's fit.
All right. So we're going to go. Who are we going to jettison then? Because now we've got a bit of an issue, haven't we? Are we going to go on the basis that we're going to just overlook Ellis now as a left back on the basis that that was his natural habitat at the back end of last season? Then, so we're going to...
I think we will on the basis that if everyone's fit at the back, then Lindsay also knows and has acknowledged that it's not his best position, so he's a midfielder.
All right. Well, let's go with that then. So we're going to have Reece Devine, Marcel Lavinier, Fraser Blake Tracy, and who am I missing?
Shade, technically.
No, I've missed.
Oh,
who am I missing?
Wait,
he was signed as
wait. So
back,
you go. It'll be between Devine, Lavinier, Blake Tracy, and what?
Well, it doesn't really matter because I know who I'm picking anyway.
Yeah, same here. Another.
Right, I'm going first. Blake Tracy.
All right. So
the poll is out
just
now.
waiting for the poll to appear. So, all right. So amongst who you're going with, Blake Tracy, Chris. Who are you going with?
Yep.
Yeah, same. I mean, you could have put Blake Tracy, Luke Jeffcott, Jake Wakelin, Charlie Austin, Scott Lindsay, whoever in that poll, and it wouldn't have mattered because the only one that needs to be in there is Blake Tracy.
All right, then. So it's up. I've just hit the retweet. So the show has just retweeted Ellis's poll. We've got FBT, we've got Devine, we've got Lavinier. Now, how many people are going to respond with Joe Tomlinson? Because it is an interesting point. His name has been the one that has been bounded around as the next most desirable. Thank you, Terry, by the way. Terry's just now what was in my head, which, of course, Tom Clayton can play left back. So we've sort of let ourselves down a little bit there, lads, albeit I will say that Tom Clayton has also made himself an automatic choice as a centre-back, would be my only point, Terry.
I think another unfortunate thing in this here is we've not really seen Reece Devine at left back, so he's on a hiding to nothing really in this poll, but because we don't really know what what you
Well,
got?
I'm going to disagree with you there, because myself and Joe Vincent have seen the lesser spotted Reece Devine in full flight down the left flank. And I'll tell you what was interesting. It was Woking pre-season, and obviously Woking are no mug, so Woking were fancied at the time in terms of being sort of challenging in the National League, which in my mind puts them there or thereabouts in relation to League Two. Now, I'll tell you what I thought was really interesting was that I spoke to Reece before the game, and he described himself as being a quote, an engine. He was saying, I'll get up and down that flank with real pace, look to get crosses in, look to join the attack. And Joe, I don't know whether I'm overstating it, but I'm pretty sure we were pretty comfortable with what we saw that day, right, from Reece?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, he was good. He had abundance of energy. The one thing I would say is it was quite, you're playing in pre-season. I tend not to judge people on pre-season. I think I had Thomas DeSevi down as the Billy Painter perfect replacement.
God, what a thought.
And, well, I know. But, I mean, Chris is kind of right. We haven't really seen too much of him in competitive games. The one thing I would say is you don't get signed for Man City and then play for Man United and train with the first team day in, day out if you're a mug. So,
true enough.
Well,
I mean, the note of caution, of course, is that, Walsall fans didn't really have, many nice things to say about young Reece when he joined us. And thank you, Jason. True to form. There's our first Tomlinson quote. But so Claire Follett's also tweeted as well to say, I had high hopes for Reece when I saw him play at Supermarine. Gutted, he's been out injured and didn't get a chance to see what he's capable of. Well, Claire, we've got another half of the season to go. Hopefully the injury that he picked up against Newport wasn't too bad, and hopefully there's nothing else to it. I mean, this is the thing. Well, there's not been any chat that's come out of the club to suggest there's been any sort of fallings out or anything along those lines. And I think, really, that's going to be surely one of the only things that's preventing Reece Devine from getting a bit of an opportunity down the left. But interestingly, you threw Shade in there and then we quickly poo-pooed it. But Walsall fans, I've said this on the show before, you talk to Walsall fans about Tyrese Shade, and they'll tell you that some of the best football that they got out of him last season was at left wing back.
But I think that's in a formation with three at the back, and we've gone against that. So that's Shade playing there is in a certain system that we've obviously voted against.
There you are, Chris, being the voice of reason. I'm more than happy to go with that, Chris, only because we've got the poll live. Well, look, I think it's fair to say we could probably rubber stamp the results of that poll, and it's a little bit like, sorry, Marcel Lavinier, but at the moment, Fraser Blake Tracy is running away with it. 87% of the vote so far. 87% of the vote.
Can I just butt in, Hannah's? I should have put a sort of an other category on the poll, but if you've got a suggestion of another player that we should bring in, drop that in the comments as well.
Don't worry, it's already been put in there. Many people are doing that. Many people are doing it already.
There we go.
Terry sent me a cheeky little ditto, Hannah's. Thank you, Terry. That's very kind. Right. So let's go on the other flank then, because obviously if we're not going to have Marcel Lavinier at left back, then surely we've got to be looking at Marcel Lavinier at right back. So our choices at right back are going to be interesting for the next poll. We've got what we got.
Darcy.
We've got Ronan Darcy. We can throw Darcy in there. I've got no problem doing that. Would you have Ronan Darcy at right back? I just know there's going to be people waiting at that idea. Romeo Hutton at right back. Marcel Lavinier at right back. Or I'm going to suggest, I know we've just sort of poo-pooed it, but possibly Tyrese Shade playing as a right back stroke right wing back. But
if you're going to throw him in, you can also probably throw Kieran Brennan in. But to be honest, this is between two people, really.
I think we know. All right. Would you want to just should we keep it simple and just go with the two then? Or do you think we're undercooking it by not including a Ronan Darcy?
I think we go with the two. Just
Ronan Darcy there because he's in midfield.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Let's be fair.
Let's keep it easy then, Ellis. So if you can just go with the two, pal, we're going to go with Hutton or Lavinia. I reckon that this is going to be a little bit dicey because I think if you put this out there about 5 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I think Romeo would have had this at a cakewalk. But obviously Marcel Lavinier, fantastic debut. And he's come in on the left-hand side and kind of done what Rob Hunt was doing for us when Caddis re-signed under Richie Wellens. He's looked decent down the left-hand side. And I really I really like the idea of
I will also say this, Mark, in this discussion, this is flat out the hardest one to make.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I said before, it's a bit like if you go with Hutton, it's like leaving a Ferrari in the garage, but then equally, if you go with Lavinia, you've got the same kind of problem,
I'm probably going to surprise people with what I'll go, but I will explain my decision.
Well, I can tell you straight off the bat that Lavinia is taking an early lead. Excuse me.
My choice would be Lavinia, because I just think he brings up more of a game. Hutton's great going forward. He's great putting the ball. But I just think Lavinia's just brings more of an all-round game, which is why if it was a one or the other, I'd go Lavinia.
Do you know what, Chris? I'd actually agree with you there. And the weirdest thing is we haven't hardly seen Lavinia at right back at all. But there was something about his game. Like, I think the first couple of games he played, he looked like an under-23 player. He looked like he was trying a few things, maybe holding on to the ball just a little bit too long. But the last couple of games, he's been outstanding, I think.
I think the one thing for Lavinia that really showed what he comes is that game when we got everyone sent off against Bristol Rovers. And from minute 1 to 90, he just did not stop running. He did not stop working, and he was outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Lavinia was great against Gilles. Again, like for a debut, you're like, wow, like super bright. I mean, I don't think it was, quite up there at like Thompson standards. But I was like, yeah, you can see that this kid's a player. And to be fair, against Northampton as well, like come bombing down the left-hand side. Yeah, I was looking at that going like, no, look, this kid can absolutely he can absolutely do the business for us. So, yeah, for me, I think it's no surprise. Like the early poll that I'm seeing has got them pretty much at the moment. Hutton's just edging it. So we'll keep half an eye on that. But just quickly go across the poll then while those numbers are coming in. Joe, who are you going with, mate? Lavinia or Hutton?
This is a hard one. This is the hardest one in the squad, I think, because if you can give me Hutton's crossing ability with Lavinia's flair and attacking threat, as in a goal threat.
Oh, come on! If your aunt that bollocks should be your uncle, Joe. Come on, they're like.
I'd have Hutton at right back, and I'd have Lavinia at right wing.
Oh, see, now I love that, but you know what? I mean, I grew up in a watching England teams with Wayne Bridge and Ashley Cole, and when they finally said, right, we're going to kind of go with them both down the left. It's what's happening at the moment, isn't it? The whole conversation about Trent Alexander-Arnold and what's his chops, Reece
James. I think the Trent comparison's a good one because Trent can cross, and I'm not comparing Romeo Hutton. Yeah, I know. I'm not comparing Romeo Hutton to Trent because obviously there's a disparity in leagues and pay grade, whatever. But you give me 2 or 3 games of Charlie Austin up front and Romeo Hutton at right back, and I'll give you a definitive answer.
Oh. Yeah, so that's
from what Joe says there, I would have the other way around. I would have Lavinia at right back and Hutton at right wing. Just purely off his crossing ability.
Well, it would appear that Claire Follett's with you on that as well, Chris. So Claire's just tweeted thoughts on Hutton possibly moving up into midfield. I guess the only question mark around that was, I think it was Stockport, wasn't it, earlier in the season when we played Hutton a little further up towards the end of the game in particular. And the gaffer got absolutely hammered. I think obviously a lot of water's passed under the bridge since then, and you've seen Hutton in offensive positions. So as a consequence, a little bit like when David, I mean, for the older listeners amongst the audience, you remember when David Platt was playing for England under Graham Taylor. Obviously, he had scored a lot of goals for Bobby Robson from midfield, and then Graham Taylor decided that he was going to play him up top alongside Gary Lineker. So. Excuse me. So similar kind of debate, I guess. Now we've seen Hutton get in those offensive positions, we're getting greedy for it. But I don't know whether pushing him up front or pushing him sort of up into a wing position naturally means that he'll be suddenly able to effectively play like a winger. because again, he's going against his wing back instincts, isn't he? He's going to be starting his runs from a different position. His positioning will be completely different. So I don't know. What do my panel feel?
It's just his crossing ability.
It
It sometimes feels like when we're crossing a ball, 9 times out of 10, they're pretty decent. The accuracy is good, the pace is good on the balls. But when you're crossing a ball into a box where you've got Ronan Darcy at the back post, or you've got Johnny Williams and Jake Wakelin in there, it feels like you're pissing in the wind at times.
Yeah, well, the thing is, a lot of time with Hutton's crossing, there's one person in the box. He's got no one to aim for. And I just think Lavinia's looks to have more about him as a defender. He just looks more that he's more natural as a defender. I think. Now, Hutton's not been bad defensively. I mean, I can't remember. Early seasons, certainly at Grimsby, maybe 2 or 3 times he cleared it off the line. I just think if you're going to play those two together, I would rather have Lavinia right back and Hutton right wing.
So personally, for me, I think looking at all the performances this season, I think I don't think you can argue that Hutton should be dropped from right back. And I think when you put into perspective with Charlie Austin coming in, these balls that Hutton are putting in that are arguably going to no one, if you've got the likes of Charlie Austin in the box, with the movement that he brings to the game, I think is a no-brainer having balls coming in like that from Hutton. I'm putting Hutton there for sure, but I'm Lavinia, Marcel Lavinia, top player. I do really like him, and it's sort of a tough situation for him because I know at the moment he can get in at left back, but fully fit squad, you put Fraser Blake Tracy there, and obviously right back he's fighting for his place with Hutton, so it's a tricky situation for him, but he's a top player as well.
Well,
I think the thing with Lavinia, you could also argue that there's a bit of an Ellis about him because he's got such a skill set that he can be very versatile, and I wouldn't be against playing him centrally, but obviously from what we've seen of him at right back and left back, we probably don't want to try and kill his game by playing him all over the place.
Well, if you're going to listen to the rumours as well that are doing the rounds, it may well be a moot point because, again, depending on who you're listening to, Romeo Hutton's going to be off. He's going to be sold for a profit, and it'll be a moot point. And Marcel Lavinia's in at right back now. Interestingly, as the poll goes, and we'll keep the poll running for another few more minutes, but Marcel Lavinia at the moment has got 55% of the vote, with Romeo Hutton at 44% of the vote. Terry's tweeted to say, I'd like to see Lavinia there. Hutton has frustrated me lately. His deliveries aren't accurate enough for me. And Mitchell Singh, hello Mitch. Mitchell's also said, I think people forget how good Hutton is defensively. He saved so many off the line this year, to Chris's earlier point. But I want to just go back and spend a little bit of time just having a bit of fun with that rumour. Would you sell Romeo Hutton? And if you would, if someone was to come in for him, what would you be selling him for? Because the answer to would you sell him has got to be yes, because we're a selling club. But what sort of money would you be expecting us to recoup for Romeo?
I've got to say, initially I had a very visceral reaction to hearing that he's going to be sold, which was, sort of knee jerk, definitely not. Just because I feel like he's been so good for us, and like I love watching him play. Like he's really exciting to watch down that right flank. However, after reflecting on it for a few seconds there and really thinking it through, I mean, it just makes sense. It's sort of like our identity as a club at the moment to make profit on players. And at the end of the day, the truth is, at this level, if he comes out of form and he has a bad few games, we might not be getting any kind of money for him. So I think it makes sense to capitalise on it. In terms of a fee, that's where it gets difficult. I'd love to get like over at least like 150 for him, 150k. But if I'm truly honest, I'm not as well versed as maybe some others on the panel about sort of prices at this level. So maybe that's a pie in the sky figure. So maybe someone else can suggest a good fee.
So if you've got a ready in place some guy who can step up for them, and you've got a guy for free, and you're going to make money on him at the level we are and whatnot, and it's probably not going to disrupt you too much. So Lavinia coming in for Hutton is really going to make much difference in the long run. It then comes down to what you're getting. I don't know what the rumour is or where the rumour is that he's going, but if it's a 6-figure fee, I think you've got to consider it.
Okay, so listen, I'll put a couple of scenarios to you then. One is that Romeo Hutton, the upside of his form this season, I think has been so good that I wouldn't be at all surprised if he wasn't on Peterborough's radar. And if he was on Peterborough's radar, then the obvious conversation that I want to be having is this part of a deal with Joe Tomlinson? Because if it is, for me, it answers so many questions, fixes so many problems. That's my point number one. Point number two will be that there is a conversation we're about to have about a certain left-sided defender potentially going back to Burton. And I would be hazarding a guess that a team like Burton might quite like the ammunition that someone like Romeo Hutton could provide. Now, I'm literally, please be clear, I'm not a turkey voting for Christmas. Ideally, you don't lose Hutton. I'll just put it out there sort of on the basis that, look, excuse me, we've already got Marcel Lavigne waiting in the wings. So if we've got to perform some surgery on this team, the funds have got to come from somewhere, or the jiggery pokery and the wheeling and dealing has got to take into account current members in the squad. And I think one of the members of the squad that has kind of sort of given himself, I wouldn't say necessarily covered himself with glory, because I don't think anyone's done that in a Swindon Town shirt so far this season, but certainly someone that's presented some upside this season considerably has been Romeo Hutton, right? So me personally, I think if he's on his way to either Burton or Peterborough, and we've got a firmed up Fraser Blake Tracy or a Joe Tomlinson ready and raring to come in on our left hand side, it's a no brainer, right?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah. But like I say, I think we've probably done this right back thing to death now as well. So I think we probably need to move on to centre half.
Yeah, let's move along. So Marcel Lavigne, we're going to give it's a tight one. Marcel Lavigne's got 53% of the vote. Romeo Hutton has got 47% of the vote. So Marcel Lavigne, you are going to be right back in our 4-4 diamond 2 formation. So centre backs then. How do we want to go about doing this?
I think we need to pick them as a pair.
Okay. Interesting. I was going to suggest, but if I may, that we put all of our centre backs down on a vote, 4 centre backs down on a vote, and the top 2 voted for are going to be the pairing.
Yeah, that works.
That work?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that as well.
Of course you were, Max, because great minds think alike.
So what, we got McDonald, Clayton, Brennan, and God, I mean, because Harry's is out for the season, Baldy's out for the season.
Minturn,
yeah.
Minturn, get him in there. So we've got Minturn, McDonald,
Brennan,
and
Clayton.
Oh my God, my brain's gone totally blank.
We can't forget Clayton's twice.
Thank you. I know it's shocking, isn't it? Absolute Rolls Royce footballer. The thing is, my brain is in the sewer at the moment in relation to the football, and I don't associate him as a footballer with the sewer. I've got to be honest.
Well, do we know how much? Do we know what's the deal with him at the moment? What's the deal with his injury, or was it illness?
On his way back. He's going to be back in the next couple of weeks. Yeah. So
the poll is out, people. I've set a 10-minute timer on it, so get your votes in quick.
Yeah. I think that I think with those 4, because of the injuries we've had, and if we're going with all of them fully fit, obviously we can't include Harry's and Baldry because they're completely long-term injuries. I think we know which 2 it's going to be, don't we?
Yeah,
really?
I think we do. And obviously the functionality of the poll is not going to allow you to pick. You're not going to be able to pick 2 players. So I think take a look at where the vote's going and just vote tactically is what I would recommend. So vote tactically, or we can run the poll twice if you so wish. But in the interest of time, this is just a bit of fun at the end of the day, guys. So let's not don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just have a bit of a giggle with it. I can already see that Tom Clayton is getting a lot of votes. So,
well, I thought early season, once he got into the team, before his injury, really, Tom Clayton was brilliant because he was down there, but the thing he brought to us was that ball out of defence, and almost if I don't really want to compare him to Conroy, but he had that element that Conroy had with the being able to play that diagonal.
Well, the other thing with him is look at the downturn in form he had once he was, because he was out of the team after Mansfield, and that's kind of where it's all sort of not fell apart, but it's definitely gone downhill since. And I think if he comes back in, then we should tighten up a bit more at the back. And again, what it's like Chris was saying, I think the thing we're missing is his ability to play us out the back effectively.
now there's
And that's what actually Blake Tracy's shown us the last few games. Not so much by the balls, but he plays a completely different game in the way he brings it out more than he pings it out.
Well, we've got, so it's interesting because we're actually getting a few votes for the minnow goat as well. So thank you, Keegan, who's tweeted with a lovely picture of a goat and the minnow goat. Obviously, local lad, very, very popular, particularly amongst the younger male supporters in the town end, who all, I think, all went to school with him. And minnow goat is getting quite a few shouts. But listen, I'm sure he's going to get some. I'm sure he'll get some votes in there just for shits and gigs. But in fairness to Harrison Minturn, he's played a round ahead of us in the FA Cup against Lincoln. Did all right, didn't he? The boy, by the way. When he's played for us this season in the Papa John's Trophy, he's looked very, very steady. Myself and Joe saw quite a bit of him in pre-season, and we were both of the opinion that he appeared to really bulk up. He looked like an athlete on par with anything else that we've got at the back there. And certainly when you saw him stood side by side with Tom Clayton, you were of the opinion that that Minturn physically was more developed than, say, Tom Clayton. And we've all seen the impact that Clayton's had on the team. So it's interesting that now we've pulled Minturn back from his loan spell, which was going gangbusters from what we understand. He's now obviously he's got this place on the bench. He's a lot closer to a starting berth, but that appears to be more because everyone else has got crocked at the moment. So he's got a chance because he's been fortunate due to others' misfortune.
Well, that's the thing, right? I think it's inevitable that you get some football with Harry's and Frenchie's injuries, them being out for months at a time. And why not? He's had a decent loan spell where he's got some consistent football, done well against higher league opposition. So I don't think it will be as daunting for us and for him as it would have been, say, 2 months ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you know, listen, he's the thing about Harrison Minturn as well is, yeah, listen, we got to give some of these lads an opportunity, right? You know, he is one of our own and all of that. But you know, cut him open. He's going to be bleeding red and white at Swindon Town, and I can vouch for that on the basis that I was sat behind him at the Walsall game with him and his dad Andy, and he was joining in with all the songs, absolutely belting it out. Like, and I didn't even recognise him at first because it was just so unusual. See, well, I know we had a few of the lads in the crowd that day, but he was, you know, I was like, wow, okay, he was literally just like anyone else in the town end. So I'd love to see somebody that's got, you know, the club's fan culture under his skin, you know, a local boy given an opportunity. Yeah. I think realistically though, are we going to build a promotion team around a centre-back pairing in a 4-4-2 diamond with Harrison Minturn and Tom Clayton?
No, yeah, I think it's hard. It's harder for a centre back, right? Because bringing in a young centre back it's not like where, say, with a striker, you can bring him on 15 minutes and we're 3-0 up and tighten it up. You don't tend to see centre backs brought off. You tend to leave them on for the 90s. I think it is a harder one. It's definitely harder to bed in a centre back from your youth team, but I think it'll be. I think now it's not a case of bedding him in. I think it's a case of look how limited our options are.
I also think it takes a defender a bit longer to sort of develop the game and whatnot at that level, and it's tougher for him to do. And we can see he's got the talent there, and he's probably one of the best defensive talents that's come through this club in a very long time. And we need to make sure that we manage him properly.
All right. Well, again, in the interest of time, Tom Clayton has run away with it as your primary selection, with your secondary selection looking like Angus MacDonald, perhaps unsurprisingly. There is another debate around the whole Angus MacDonald piece. Go on, Chris.
I was going to say, Angus MacDonald, from my experience at games this season, has pretty much split the fan base. I've heard so many people who have just don't like him, just laid into him, and other people, oh, he's a proper defender and whatnot. And it's literally straight down the middle. So it's, I think, all right, there's been issues in his career that we know of, serious health issues that he's had to deal with, and then he's had a serious injury this season. But I mean, we've had some games at Grimsby, he was outstanding. At Barrow, he was outstanding. So we've seen him there, and he's had bad games and whatnot, and whatnot. But I think as a pure defender, I think he's been good.
He's a League Two defender at the end of the day, Chris, isn't he? All League Two footballers, they're going to make mistakes, right? And
he's not going to ping a ball out to the left wing like Tom Clayton will, but he'll be in there. He'll put his head in. He's not quick, but he's got the little bit of nous to just be League Two, really.
Cool. Look, Claire's warming me cockles. So Claire's just tweeted, imagine local lads Joe Tomlinson and Harrison Minturn in the same back line. Yes, please, says Hannah's, furiously rubbing his thighs, Vic Reeves style, at his laptop. I love the sound of that. And Jason's followed up as well, saying, why would you not have Harrison Minturn in a promotion-winning side, Mark? Do you not think that we can get promoted with McDonald's piss-poor passing? Well, yeah, I think it was an interesting one. So the Low Strangers did a really interesting pod this week. I thought it was outstanding. And I think it was this week's pod, actually, or possibly last week's, where they were talking about him being a bit of a slow starter in games, and he kind of like warms up. I think it was Dan's point, actually. So I think that's possibly last week. But it's a very interesting point about McDonald. But listen, we just sort of addressed that head on. Keegan's saying, agreed, if we want to play possession-based passing football, we have to have ball-playing centre-backs. And McDonald is far from that. He's an old-fashioned centre-back. So, yeah, interesting one, Keegan. But I do believe if McDonald is your stopper and Tom Clayton's getting on the ball, I don't think you need to have two footballing centre-backs. I think you're gonna be doing very, very well on the recruitment stakes if you've got two pinging the ball.
But it comes back to the thing when we were linked to Sol Bamba. Sol Bamba's not passing to anyone. He's got to pass to the ball player. So I don't think having a proper defender who's not like got a great passing range is that bad a thing. He can either play it into there or play it into midfielder. He doesn't have to hit. You don't have to have two centre halves hitting those raking passes. You just need to have one.
Oh, Chris, I've got to read this. So James Van has gone all American on us. Hello again, James. James has said, I voted for the Mac Daddy. Just wish he instilled more of his personality and made an impact like we all expected he would. Yeah, I think James's point's a really interesting one, actually. I think when we signed Angus MacDonald, I think we were expecting him to just basically almost grab the club by the scruff of the neck, given the amount of experience that he's had up and down the leagues. And I think a combination of injury and obviously coming back from his own struggles last season, I think that's clearly going to have taken his toll. But listen, to be totally honest, I think maybe I'm answering your question here, Jason. To be fair, I'm not really that miffed with Angus this season. I'm not on that much of a downer about him, and I think really looking at I want to see Harrison given his opportunities. I want to see Minnow go, do ever so well for Swindon Town. At the moment, though, for me, it's Clayton and MacDonald. Like, it's got to be. And the poll would appear to agree at the moment. So Clayton's got 73% of the vote. MacDonald's got 17%. And some way behind is Harry Minturn on just under 9%. And poor old Kieran Brennan hasn't got a single vote. Just to finish on Brennan, do we think that Brennan's not got a single vote because we believe that he was bought to be a right-sided centre-back in a back three or back five, and nobody trusts him in a four? Nobody being fans, I would say.
I think, talking about Brennan, I mean, the games he's had one or two games when he's been very good, but on the whole, he's been average. And I think the thing with Brennan more than anything is he's a lone player. And is he really better than what we've got? And I think that's the question that you always have to ask with a lone player. And to me, I don't think he's really. I mean, how much better is Brennan than Minton?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I think you've eloquently put it, Chris, and I wouldn't expand on it any further. Well, look, we're going with a 4-4-2 diamond. So now we need to look at our central defensive options, don't we? Now, are we going to go down the road of looking at all of our midfielders as potentially slotting in? Because there has been conversations I've had this season where people have talked about Gladwin playing in that kind of central defensive midfield pivot role, almost like a quarterback. Obviously, if you were going on last season's form, Louis Reed's by far and away best footballer in League Two, personal opinion. You've got Saidu Khan this season, who at the start, when we first signed him, we were told that Saidu Khan was being brought in as almost like a replacement for Jack Payne. But now Saidu Khan seems to have turned himself into Louis Reed's sort of direct competition for the central defensive midfield role. You could, I wouldn't like to see it, but you could say, well, Johnny Williams' experience at the highest level, which you would surely consider having him sat in front of a back four where he can basically see the entire game in front of him and allow that to be the canvas of which he creates his art. And obviously you've got Tom Clayton that can play in central defensive midfield as well. So we've got more options there than I think you might instinctively think. So let's help Ellis out here with a poll, guys. Who are we going to go with? Obviously we're going to go Reedy, we're going to go Khan. Who are we going to put in for the other two? We're going to go.
I see this one as the fact that I actually think all of us will probably come up with a different formation here, and I find this as a difficult one to put into a poll, partly because you can only put 4 in, and I think we've got more than 4 to put into a poll, so maybe we need to siphon it off to defensive and attacking midfielders.
More than happy to do that. Well, as you work out who you want, I'm just going to read out a tweet quickly from Charlie Upper Swin. Hello, Charlie. Charlie's DM'd and he said, personally, I think Brennan is brilliant. He can pass the ball and defend. What more can we want? So, yeah, I would say so, Charlie. But then I'm also looking at the poll and seeing that you haven't voted then, if that's your vote. So I'm guessing you're either going to contradict yourself and you've gone with Clayton and you've resisted the temptation to go with a tactical vote for Brennan. Or you maybe came on a little bit late and you missed the instruction. But I'll leave that. I can see you typing to me now, you rascal. So let me know what you're thinking, Charlie. But go on in, Chris. You dictate to Ellis. Who are we going to go with? Who's going to be our...
Right, so we're talking defensive midfielders then. Let's go. So let's say defensive midfielders or deeper line players. So we're going to go Reed, Khan, Gladwin.
Clayton.
Clayton's in the starting 11 already. Can't have him.
Of course we can. All right, but let's just go with those three.
Go Dvorak.
No, let's say we'll go with. So Reed, Gladwin,
Dvorak is your shout. Dvorak is your shout.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, anyone that wants to disagree, I'm going to just say one word to you. Barrow. Oh, my God, I thought he was sublime when he came on.
He was.
Yeah, absolute baller.
Right, so...
The poll is out, people.
Right, your poll is out. So just to remind everybody, we're going, for those of you that have just joined the vote, we are saying, obviously, Charlie Austin is coming back into the mix on the 14th, and we are picking a team that we believe will get the best out of him, and not just the team, but a formation. The formation was the first thing that we picked. We went with of the 4 options, you guys and we indeed as a panel voted for a 4-4-2 diamond formation. And so far we have voted your team as follows. Your goalkeeper situation is pretty straightforward, but there was a slightly more complex tweak to the vote, but Sol Bryn got the nod in goal. At left back was Fraser Blake Tracy. Your centre half pairings were Tom Clayton, Angus McDonald, and at right back, probably the surprise of the night so far is Marcel Lavinier has usurped Romeo Hutton at right back. So we're now going to talk about central defensive midfielders. Jason's given us another graphic. He's given us another graphic, and this time he's given in, and he's gone with our diamond, and he's put Reedy in there. He has put Reedy in there. I mean, listen, it's a big point. I mean, the votes are already flying in for Reedy, but I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's been a lot of chat about Louis Reed this season and what the gaffer sort of sees in Khan that he doesn't see in Reed, and that, you know, he says that Reed's a smashing lad, and then Reed's come back in the team, then he was back out the team, then he was back in the team again. I mean, are we buying any of it? You know, do we really believe that he believes that Saidu Khan brings more to the central defensive midfield position than Louis Reed, or are you lot looking at it kind of maybe like I am, which is, hang on a minute, he's got 1 year left on his deal, and this has got to be contractual, surely?
Well, I don't know about that, but I also think that he's playing Khan in the wrong position. I think Khan, when you look at Khan's game, it's not suited to that central defensive role. It's more from a more advanced midfielder. But there could be obviously the politics in there. That's another thing to throw into the mix. But I'd
be astounded if Louis Reed is here come February 1st.
I also think he's off, which is a massive shame as well, because like let's get it clear. When Louis Reed is on song, he's one of the best players in this league, without a doubt. So not having him in the squad would be massively upset. And I have to echo what Chris said as well. I don't really get why we're still playing Khan in a box to box sort of role. I'd love to see him in that central attacking midfield position. Now I know obviously we've got Johnny Williams as well, but just give him a run there. You know, like half a game, 45 minutes, see what he can do. He's clearly got a great shot on him, so you never know.
Well, there's also been some, I mean, much like the Hutton rumour, there's little whispers and rumours going around on socials about Saidu Khan departing this parish as well. And I mean, again, I won't go down the road of asking you how much you would, you know, that you would be paying, but I believe that the rumour that was going around is Saidu Khan to Plymouth for Jeffcott and cash. I mean, I personally, I'd bite your hand off if that deal was offered to me. I think, by the way, big fan of Saidu Khan, and I think he's got loads more to show us in the Swindon show. I would imagine he's probably feeling that he's only just about starting to settle at the county ground. So I wouldn't necessarily be sort of looking to move on.
Yeah, I don't rate Khan, to be honest.
I was going to say,
I think if that's a thing with the Plymouth deal, I think you snap your hand off for it, because this position for me is Reed. It's easy decision, no brainer. You put Reed in CDM, whatever's going on, he's your best player in that position. You play him there. Yeah. When he hooked him off for Khan against Colchester, I don't see what Khan brought on the pitch other than he gave the ball away a number of times. He's not going to try the things that Reed's going to try. I think if we're trying to play positive, you put Reed there because he'll be that anchor man at the back, linking up defensive midfield. And I don't think there's any midfielder at the club who does it better than him.
Yeah,
I think I have to agree with Max generally about Khan, and like I say, if that's the deal that's on the table, you snap your hands off. I expected more from Khan than what we've seen.
One thing I will say is, I personally wouldn't be selling both. I think it's either one or the other for me.
Yeah, definitely.
And sort of hearing about the Khan to Plymouth for Jeffcott, I'd be personally taking that and keeping Louis Reed in the squad. I think what Louis Reed brings to the team and just the quality of player that he is, I'd 100% be keeping him. And
it's one of those, isn't it? I think if you can keep Louis Reed until the end of the season, if you get him back on form, you've got a good chance of getting promoted. And then if he leaves for free, then you shake his hand, you give him a pat on the bum on the way out the door, don't you? Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Although apparently the Khan rumour came up through Tannin for him, so take it with a lump of salt.
Yeah, you're gonna trigger a big fight there, man.
I know. I'm preparing for the pitchforks again.
Like an Anchorman scene, wouldn't there? You'll have the Low Strangers on one side, Fools Rush on the other, the Town End Forum, and the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. I wonder which one would be the Spanish language news. I think I'll take that quote because I'm rocking a tash at the moment, let me tell you. Rocking the tash. So, right. So I think it's fair to say, looking at the vote, I mean, look, I would urge you good listeners, because there's many, many, many more listeners than there are votes going on. I'd like to think that that's purely because this one's a little bit of a no-brainer vote. This one, I think everyone is of the opinion that you play your best quality footballers, and in order to do that, you've got to be having Louis Reed in your central defensive midfield position. It's the popular vote every week in the stands. You hear everyone saying it every time Reedy's on the bench. Why have you got Reedy on the bench? But like you guys, I kind of fear that we're not gonna see Louis beyond January in a red shirt. That's a real sickener. A couple of tweets in relation to this. Jason Lane's tweeted. He says, for me, Saidu Khan doesn't fit in a 4-4-2. Claire's tweeted, what about another Matt Smith? Again, came up on the show last week as a conversation. He's back at Arsenal under 23s at the moment. Still very, very popular after his stint in that ill-fated John Sheridan season. Oh, God, the thought of it. Didn't really work out for him at Charlton. Didn't really work out for him at Doncaster. He's found his way back at Arsenal. So I'm sure we would certainly have him back. Keegan's tweeted, good evening, Keegan. Keegan says, Khan playing in a more advanced role gives you the option to play him the ball with his back to goal and turn his man. Now, he has got a calm turn on him, as we talked to him about when he came on the show. So he says, turn his man and get a through ball through to the likes of Wakeling like he did against Leyton Orient. It's a good shout, Keegan. It's a really, really good shout. Parody Glenmore Fooney, good evening. How are you, Mark? He says, Reed's no longer good enough to be in the first team. Great last season, ineffective this time to ring the changes. I think, Mark, listen, to your point, I think Louis would be the first one to hold his hands up and say he hasn't got anywhere near his standards last year, but I still think half of Louis Reed last season is better than anything that we've got in the squad this year, because I'm not seeing it from any of those alternatives. And I think it's still too early in both in this season and his career to throw Anton Dworzak in there.
I think the issue as well, to be honest, he hasn't really had the opportunity, has he? He's had the odd game here and there, but he hasn't had a good run of games to sort of get back in the rhythm.
Yeah, no, I'll make you right, pal. I'll make you right. Well, look, we're gonna move on from the vote, because the popular vote quite clearly says Louis Reed by quite some distance. 86% of the vote, just shy of 5% of the vote for Saidu Khan, and interestingly, twice that amount, nearly 10% of the vote has gone to Ben Gladwin. And unsurprisingly, and I think, again, that's a little bit more, a bit like Jack Copland, a bit of protection, Anton Dworzak hasn't picked up any of the votes, but that is no slight on you, young Anton. Right, so now we're going to go with our wide positions. So we're going to go wide on the left. So wide on the left has got to be, surely, Johnny Williams. It's got to be Ellis.
Hepburn Murphy.
I beg your pardon?
Sorry, I was going to say Hepburn Murphy.
Oh, interesting. All right. You want to...
And Wakeling.
We're playing a diamond. There's no wide players.
Yeah, well, you know what I mean. It's the pointy bit of the diamond. You're getting all technical with me now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right, so who are we going to go with then? We're going to go with Ellis, and we're going to go with Johnny
Gladwin.
Gladders. He's a left pegger, isn't he?
And Darcy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Darcy's on the other side, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, actually.
All right. So Ellis, as he's building the next poll, that we're going to go. Khan, again, I think he's on the right.
This is a tricky thing with the diamond, and we've had to split the midfield up. Is who goes one side, who goes the other.
I think people might end up voting for Williams, but I put Williams in the number 10 position here myself.
Yeah.
I think really for this one, what we need to vote is who's going to play in the number 10 position behind the two strikers, because we've said we're going to play a diamond with two up front, and now we're...
It kind of makes it feel like you're making it easier for them, though, Chris. You're making it easier for the listener. I want to work these people. I want to sweat them.
Yeah.
So let's give Ellis 3 or 4 definitives then on the left.
I have just put it out, but I can redo it.
No, I think it's good. Williams, Iandolo, or Gladwin. I'm happy with that. God, dear, it's a tough one, isn't it? Personally,
I'm going Gladwin. I would like to see Williams a little bit higher up, in sort of more central role. We spoke about it earlier in the show. I don't think Iandolo is your better option. I'm picking Gladwin. I think the balls that he's been playing this season has been phenomenal. Yeah, so Gladwin for me.
Yeah, my vote's just gone along with Ellis. I think Josh put a comment earlier on about Williams being more effective in the 10. I do think you probably get the best football out of Johnny there. He's probably, he's our top goal scorer, isn't he? So he has been our biggest goal threat this year. And I think you lose it a little bit out wide. I think Charlie Austin up front with Wakelin or Jeffcott with Johnny Williams in behind, feeding those through balls and taking pot shots from the edge of the box. I think it's just the way we win games in the second half of the season.
Do you know what I see, though? Do you know what I see? I see the Man City goal. I see Johnny Williams at the kind of, at the tip of the diamonds, bursting through the midfield. And I just see, options opening up around him and him just like dinking little balls into space. And
the thing is, with his pedigree, the biggest thing that Johnny possesses is his agility. If he hits the ball on the halfway line with his back to goal, he's got a lovely little turn in him where he can pick the ball up with one touch, and then 2 seconds later he's sprinting at a defence. He's deceptively quick as well. And I feel like, as you say, that goal, McCurdy was overlapping on the right, and he's ahead of McCurdy. McCurdy has to work his arse off to get in front of Johnny and make that run. And he's got the nous, he's got the ability to play those balls, and he's so much more effective through the middle.
Well, dear listener, as you listening to me, get on the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge thread, and I've just retweeted, and get on Ellis's latest poll. So at the moment, the voting is going with Ben Gladwin, 57% of the vote, Ellis Iandolo, 28% of the vote, nearly 29% of the vote, and Johnny Williams is at 14% of the vote. And I think that is fitting that narrative that you've just come out with, Joe, to be frank.
I completely agree with Joe there as well. That if we're going to get the best out of Johnny Williams, he's got to go through the middle. I think if he goes through the middle, he can drift out wide when it's necessary, but he causes more damage and he's more in the game when he's through the middle. Whether that's an 8 or a 10, he's just more in the game, and he dictates the game. And when he's more dictating the game, we're a better team.
Jason completely disagrees with all of us, and he's saying it's Jake Wakelin in there all day long. Well,
I was actually going to suggest this. I'm not going to lie. I feel like those choices on the left, like especially that sort of wide flank of the pitch, you want someone with like a really high work rate, and that's the only thing that sort of puts me off Gladwin being there. The fact that he's a lot fitter this season, but you really need the legs across the sort of the touchline of the pitch. That's what makes me think Wakelin might succeed.
Do you not?
I think it's just this is the problem of playing a diamond with a 4-4-2, isn't it? We're trying to pack out the midfield, so Gladwin essentially would be playing the left side of centre midfield of a midfield three in this formation. If you go to a 4-1-2-1-2 where you're playing, playing two set like wingers essentially and a defensive midfielder and an attacking midfielder, then I'd have Wakelin or Hepburn Murphy out there. But I think, well, at least in my head, what I thought we were going for is a tight diamond packing out the midfield.
Oh, listen to you, Joe. I thought what we were going for.
Sorry, Hannah, it's all your
taking
fault.
your ball and running away now, aren't you? See, listen, because you lot shot your bolt and decided to stick Marcel Lavinier in at right back. You could have had a hard work right footer on the left hand side of your diamond in Marcel Lavinier, but you've decided not to. Now,
well, if this helps, what have I said? So if we're going off the same thing we did against Mansfield, the four in midfield that day were Khan, Darcy, Gladwin, and Williams.
That's what I would have.
Yeah, that's what I think. The formation in my head, if I can work it out, that's kind of what I thought we're going for. The 4-1-2-1-2, but really quite tight.
Well, Ash has tweeted, and Ash is saying we need a new signing option on this and on the right-hand side. See, but this is the thing, Ash. We've already got like this embarrassment of riches, as you might refer to it, but some might, depending on what side of the fence you're on at the moment. God, could you imagine if we brought another 2 midfielders into this piece? But but I kind of see where you're coming from, Ash. I mean, oof, all right. I mean, look,
I wouldn't hate a signing in centre midfield.
Personally, I would argue we've got one of the better midfields in the league.
Can I be unpopular as well and say that within a diamond for the 4 of me, I wouldn't have Darcy as one of my starters?
Well, we're going to come on to that because I think we've just agreed we're going to stick him over on the right-hand side options. But, so hold your horses, Chris. Ellis, sorry, mate. Go on, you round off what you were about to say.
Yeah, I think we have one of the better midfields in the league. I think if you look at the players in the positions we've got, Louis Reed, like we said, not got off to the best start this season, but last season probably one of the best players in the league. Saidu Khan, Ronan Darcy, Ben Gladwin, the balls that Ben Gladwin's been playing this season, like some of them look virtually impossible. So yeah, when you look at that team on paper, that midfield on paper, I think you could probably argue as one of the better in the league. But then you got to ask yourself, why are we not higher up in the table?
Ash is answering that, and he's saying if we're going to play in a tight diamond, we need a new signing. Simple as that. Ash, I think what you're kind of generally hearing is, I think we tend to agree with you, but I can't help but think if we're going to bring more bodies into midfield, we've got so many options in there. Like you've got to see, 1 or 2 of the current boys go, haven't you? God, silence.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Sorry, no, I'll jump in. I think Louis Reed goes, and then that probably answers the question of where we're aiming our sort of purse strings at, and it's going to be a defensive midfielder. But I can't see the club, if he's going to stand firm on not signing a new contract. It wouldn't make sense from a business decision, or maybe even a football decision this season, of are we going to risk it and lose him for free, or take, what would it be, maybe 25, 30 grand? I don't even know what we get for him, but we'd probably lose Khan or Reed. If I'm picking one, I'd probably take Reed going. But then it's tough. Cash and Jephcott for Khan, yes.
Well,
if I'm picking Khan going to a random team or Reedy going to a random team, maybe Reedy.
Well,
but we love him.
You've got London Crooner has tweeted, "Good evening, London Crooner," and he's got Johnny Williams. He's gone for the Johnny Williams down the left-hand side, and he's gone with. We'll come on to the next selections, but he's gone with 2 rather interesting selections in both the attacking midfield option and also on the right midfield, which we will come on to. But looking at the vote, one last call for votes, guys, between now and I'll say about 10 seconds time. So if you're listening in, jump onto the thread, have a look under our retweets on the, at T_STBL. So where you're listening to this show, get on there, get your votes in quick. But it's looking like Ben Gladwin has got the nod for wide left on a 4-4-2. Right. Ellis, let's get us set up for the right-hand side. Good evening, John Saunders. Campbell Saunders has just said it's bloody Wednesday. Only just seen the lounge on. Yeah, better late than never, John. But the show is recorded as always, pal, so you'll be able to catch up. I won't go for what we're doing, John. Just listen, you'll get the gist. So, right-hand side of the midfield, guys. So we've got a few selections here, haven't we? So we've got Ronan Darcy. We've mentioned him a few times. So this is to help Ellis with the selection. We're going to go with at least 4. We've got Ronan Darcy. Do you want to put Saidu Khan in there?
See, this is the toughest thing with this.
Well, midfield. we know, but that's why we're here.
Yeah. But can we also put, because we've ousted him, can we also put Hutton on the right side of our midfield?
Yeah, I'd see no reason why you couldn't have Hutton, Darcy, Khan, and who else do you want to put in there on the basis we're not going to put a win?
You've got Shade, I guess, but
Tyree Shade, of course.
Yeah, I'm all right.
I'd probably have Shade
there.
I quite like the idea.
The thing is, I'm just when we talk further later on about our diamond, I'll have a different formation, but then we'll. But yeah, I'll put Shade out there.
All right, so
or even Morgan Roberts.
Well, yeah, I think realistically, we'll probably look at Morgan Roberts maybe a bit. I mean, look, you're right, but again, on the basis that the gaffer has only really given him the last couple of minutes, he still fit me. He sits in the Dworzak Minturn bracket. I don't agree with that, by the way, because I love what I've seen from Morgan Roberts, who, by the way, has the best highlights reel on YouTube for those of you that haven't seen. But Ellis's poll is up. So we have got Darcy, Khan, Hutton and Shade for the right-hand side midfield position. And you are right, Mark. You say Roberts is the only out-and-out winger in the squad. Yep, we completely agree. Completely agree. I'd like to see more of him, but I'm not the gaffer. So get your votes in, ladies and gents. The poll is up as of 42 seconds ago. And Ellis has got Darcy, Khan, Hutton and Shade for your right midfield position. Now, it's a tough one because Ronan Darcy was, of course, the darling of the stands, and then found himself unceremoniously benched at the weekend. ColU Khan's been the topic of much debate tonight. Romeo Hutton found himself, interestingly, dropped by Swindon Town fans listening to this show in favour of Marcel Lavinier. Is that because you were about to push him onto the right-hand side of your midfield diamond? And then, of course, you've got Tyree Shade. He scored his third goal for the club against Northampton with an absolute rocket and showing us increasingly little glimpses of what it is that we've signed him for that should be getting us so excited. So Darcy, Khan, Hutton or Shade. So far, just to reiterate, and this will probably help you, John Saunders, we are trying to pick a team that is going to get the best out of Charlie Austin and vice versa. So far, we've got Solbrin in goal. We've got Fraser Blake Tracy at left back, Marcel Lavinier at right back, Tom Clayton and Angus MacDonald are your centre-backs in a 4-4-2 diamond. Louis Reed's sitting in front of them. On the left-hand side of midfield, you've got Ben Gladwin. Now we're picking the right-hand side of midfield. And the votes thus far are... Ronan Darcy is taking an early lead according to the popular vote. How's my panel going with this?
In this setup, and I'm going for a narrow one, with the options, and considering Gladwin's gone for left, I'm going to have to go Khan.
So Chris is going Khan. How about you, Joe?
I've voted. I vote for Darcy. Purely, I think he is a bit lightweight at times, but I think he's growing in confidence in terms of, you know, bouncing off of people and getting stuck in. And I think he offers more of a goal threat moving forward than Khan does. I think it's fluid. That side of it, really. If you're playing in that position, you can play Khan against some teams, you can play Darcy against other teams, and maybe you play them on a revolving door basis until someone cements their place.
Yeah, I've got you.
The one thing I'd like to say about why I've omitted Darcy here is I actually think he would be a pretty decent guy to come on for the last 25, 30 minutes to bring some energy, change the game. But it's such a hard decision for who to do. But that's why I haven't picked.
Well, do you know what? Ash has just
Darcy.
Ash has just pointed out a very good point. Because we didn't close the poll, Hutton's overtaken Lavinier at right back. So Hutton's now got 55% of the vote, with Lavinier at 45%. Now, are we going to draw a line and say, no, we gave you every opportunity up to that point, or are we going to...
Yeah, when we finished, it was Lavinier, so Lavinier got...
Yeah, Ash...
Yeah, that's the 60th minute substitution.
Yeah, the judges.
You're going to have to forgive us, Ash, but at the end of the day, it's just a bit... We're only having a bit of a giggle. We're having a bit... There's a serious tone to it because we're picking a proper team. But hey, we can't let chaos ensue. So, all right.
Hannah, I'll give you my pick for this position. I'm going with Darcy just based off the fact that we've already got Reed in the side and Gladwin, and I feel those two players are quite defensive. So to have Darcy's sort of attacking threat, if you'd want to call it that, but more sort of attacking play. I think if we had Saidu Khan in there as well, he's a good player, but I think you're sort of setting up too defensively. I'm going to Ronan Darcy.
Ronan Darcy for you. Well, Reserve Rain has tweeted and says Khan would help hold the ball up for Lavs to overlap, or he could do the famous Khan turn and use his creativity like he did at Chesterfield. Darcy is more of an energy sub to make a tired opposition midfield panic and regain the ball quicker. So he's clearly gone with Khan as well, which is interesting. The popular vote, so the vote at the moment is Ronan Darcy has got nearly 48% of the vote. Khan's on 20%. Romeo Hutton is sneaking in there with 28.6%. And Tyree Shade is just shy of 5% of the vote. It's changing as we speak. Hutton is catching up with Darcy. Right, who else? Jason, who did you go for, buddy, on the right-hand side of your midfield?
Oh, it'll be Darcy for me. I think it's Darcy or Khan. If Gladwin's not there, then you need a right footer. So yeah,
Darcy or Khan, you've gone Darcy. I went Darcy as well. Who's not giving us their vote? Max, did we get yours?
No, I went with Darcy because he'll have a few shots.
You've gone Darcy as well. What about you, Mike?
Personally, I'm also going Darcy, and like I know we've already said that it's sort of like a tight formation, but I'm convinced that at some point the left and right wide midfielders, they're going to end up in the sort of flanks at some point. Just because otherwise, if you play too tightly, all they're going to do is just compact the defence and then give us a low block. So ideally, I want someone who's able to give us some of that wide presence as well, and I think Darcy does that better than Khan.
Yeah, and Ash would tend to agree with you. Who's just tweeted to say I'd play Darcy for balance, but I'd not be disappointed if Khan, Darcy, Shade all moved on in place of a fresh face. So, the vote is very, very tight on this one. So Darcy, there's another little bump there. So Darcy, I think, has pretty much got the nod on the right-hand side. So Darcy, 48%, Khan, 14%, Hutton, 29%. I think unless we get a last-minute rush, we're going to stick with Ronan Darcy on the right of a midfield diamond. Right then, so we need to look at the tip of the spear. Who are we going for? Let's help Ellis out. Who are we going to drop in there, guys? So we've got, I think we've got a few shouts here, potentially. So we've been sent a few graphics of people putting Jake Wakelin in a slightly more advanced midfield role, allowing Messrs Jeffcott and Austin to link up. We'll come on to strikers, obviously, but who are you going for? Who should we give Ellis?
I think if we're going to suggest people here, the obvious one is Williams, and then Darcy's gone for the other one, so he could have potentially been another guy there. I would say Williams, Shade.
I think you got to go.
Roberts.
Given that Khan was reportedly signed to be another like a Jack Payne replacement, so I think you've got to have a look at Khan again in that forward role.
Maybe Hepburn Murphy as well, because he's not had a shout yet.
Yeah, that's a good shout. So what we're going to go with then? We're going to go with Williams, Khan, Hepburn Murphy, Wakeling. What about?
Yeah, Shade. Have we said Shade? Sorry.
No, we haven't said Shade either.
I would put Shade in that because I think Shade's shown a little bit more in those attacking areas. So I would say Williams, Shade, Hepburn Murphy, Roberts.
See, I'm gonna say we should keep our powder dry on Hepburn Murphy, and I think that's got to be a debate for the striker role alongside Charlie. Right. So I'm just because I wouldn't want to not consider Khan, and I wouldn't want to not consider. I mean, if we're going to look at strikers playing in that role, given that we've got competition from midfielders in that role, I think you've got to put Jake ahead of Hepburn Murphy.
Yeah, but the system's got to be quite fluid as well, so that's what makes this really tough.
Yeah, no, it really is. All right, but look, for the interest of time and for the interest of Ellis's sanity, What are we going to go with then? We're going to go with
Williams and Shade, definitely.
Shade, Khan, and what do you want? What's your final one?
I put Wakelin.
There you go. That's what we'll go with. Okay. So whilst Ellis is getting that poll up live,
it should be out now. Got to dig through the comments, try to find it.
So get yourselves over to the thread, guys, and get your votes in. We are going for Williams, Khan, Shade, and Wakelin to play alongside Solbrin in goal. Fraser Blake Tracy left back, Tom Clayton left central defence, Angus McDonald right centre, and Marcel Lavinia at right back. We've got Ben Gladwin on the left of a diamond. We've got Ronan Darcy on the right of a diamond. Louis Reed sitting in. And we are now picking the tip of the spear. So the early votes are all going Johnny Williams. Unsurprisingly, it's pretty much fit the narrative of the show so far, guys, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, two things, Hannah's. Joe asked if he can be let back into the lounge.
Activity. That's how I run.
And I'll kick things off with us. I'm going to go with Johnny Williams. You touched on it earlier, Hannah. So the ball that he played to McCurdy in the Man City goal. I think that sums him up perfectly. If you look at how he played against Mansfield, again that sums him up perfectly. And even in the Northampton game, you know, he I think he got the original shot off, and then it rebounded out to Tyree Shade. So I think what Williams brings, he brings experience and good balls and agility. So yeah, I'm picking Williams.
Piers 36 to agree with you. He's just tweeted to say, for me, it has to be Willow in that number 10 spot. Such an influential player on the ball. Feel like he's slightly wasted out on the left-hand side. We've seen that this guy can seriously tear up this league. Every time he's on the ball, something happens. 100% Williams for me. Pierce, old chap, you have absolutely nailed my thoughts entirely. I think the problem with him out on the left is he doesn't see enough of the ball. And in the great tradition of technicians in a Swindon Town shirt, best thing you can do is get him on the ball as much as you possibly can. The way you're going to do that with Johnny Williams is get him on the tip of the spear, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm always like that. With Johnny Williams, he's our most probably technically gifted player. He's our most creative player. He's our best player. Play him through the middle, play him between the midfield and the forwards, which is obviously that number 10 role. And he can drift out left, he can drift out right. But play him in the middle, or even like just give him that free role and let him go where the ball is, let him go where what he needs to do to create stuff. And I think that's when we're going to get the best out of him. But like you say, when he's out on that left wing role, we're wasting the best player in the league.
Yeah,
I mean, the man went to the World Cup. He's one of two players to go to the World Cup. He has to be in our 11, doesn't he? He's by far the best number 10. Maybe, I mean, George Moncur might have something to say about that, but he's playing for the wrong team, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a fair.
He has. It's not quite been as since he's come back from the World Cup as good as he was before. But if you get him in the middle, get him on the ball. But you know that could also be to the fact that we've been shit since then anyway. But get him in the middle, get him on the ball, and he can be our heart.
Well, look, according to my votes as they're rolling in, it is 100% Johnny Williams at the tip of the spear, according to this. So I think, again, in the interest of time, we give the shirt to Willow all day long. There's no way there is going to be a late rush of interest unless we're getting trolled. But, you know, again, it says something when you've got Johnny Williams being picked ahead of Saidu Khan, Tyree Shade and Jake Wakelin, all on their day, like really, really like decent performers, particularly obviously Jake Wakelin, given what he's given us this year. But Johnny Williams gets it, I would say. Right, let's move on to, I guess, the final spot then, guys, which is going to be, we all know that Charlie, 100%, as far as we're concerned, starts the game. We all kind of pretty much pre-agreed that in our pre-show chat. There is, of course, the risk that we've talked about, where Charlie potentially starts the game as a sub, but we're of the opinion that's not going to happen, and that he will be playing from the start in that game. So we say. So up front, alongside him, here are your choices. Then, as far as I can see, you've got Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy, Jake Wakeling, Luke Jeffcott. Who do you want to put in there as your fourth choice? Will it be Tyrese Shade, or is it?
Yeah, Tyree Shade, definitely.
I think,
I don't think there's anyone else.
I think the only options there is Shades and Roberts, really.
Yeah, and I think you're picking Shade ahead of Roberts all day long for a Twitter poll, aren't you?
Yes.
Only other one is Adeloy, isn't it, in terms of like strikers?
Yeah, of course. If you want to go with Tommy Adeloy.
Oh yeah, Adeloy, yeah.
But you can't pick Adeloy ahead of Shade.
Yeah, it's a good point, because again,
we've only got 4 options.
You're going off the basis of the manager's recent selections. Tyrese has beaten Adeloy hands down to a starting spot, hasn't he? Adeloy's had to stay on the bench.
He started the last 2 games, so you can't.
No, you can't. So I don't know how you feel about this panel, but I've got a feeling you've got to stick with Tyrese. Yes. Let's go with it. Let's go with it, Ellis. So we're going with Tyrese, Jake Wakeling, Luke Jeffcott to partner Charlie Austin on the 14th against Grimsby. Let's get that poll up and let's get these votes done ASAP, because time is a cracking on.
That one's up, but Austin's not in it. I only had 4 choices. So.
No, Austin's already playing. It's who plays with him.
What time is it in Brisbane?
Oh, you wise ass. We're past that, though. We're big.
It's
Who cares anymore?
He's here
We're
now.
bigger and better than that.
But I'll start with this one as well. As I'm going for Jeffcott, because I just think there'll be a decent partnership, and I also think that having Hepburn-Murphy and Wakeling on is a good partnership to come on to mix it up and whatnot. 2 young lads who will learn a lot off him, and as we go through. But I think initially, I think Austin and Jeffcott is the best option we have at present.
Yeah, I said Jeffcott. I say Jeffcott as well, just because I mainly want to see what Jeffcott can do in a 2 up front as well, and especially if they've got Johnny behind them, who I think in the middle Johnny's going to be able to unlock defence better and feed balls through to him. So I think that they will get chances, and I think you've got 2 guys there who will make the most of whatever chances are laid out for them.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Jason's tweeted to say Shade and Adeloy are 2 different players. One is a wing back, the other is a centre forward. All I would say to that, Jason, is tell that to Scott Lindsay, who likes Shade as both a centre forward and a wing back. But take your point on Tommy Adeloy. Tell you what, it would crack me up if Scott Lindsay turned around and deployed Tommy Adeloy up front with Charlie Austin on his debut, and they go on to absolutely rip the league to shreds. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
The one thing as well, I'd say to that, the right back or left back has scored 3 goals in the league this season. The other one hasn't scored any.
Yeah, very, very good point. And listen, Tyrese Shade's another one of those lads. Like, watch him in the warm up. Like, watch the way he wraps his laces through that ball, and watch the velocity at which that ball travels and nearly breaks the net. Like, it's just, for me, it's like an instinct thing. We talked earlier about positioning and getting into a rhythm and all that kind of stuff. I get the impression with Tyrese Shade, he's just one of those players that just needs to play. He needs someone to put an arm around his shoulder and go, right, that's your spot. Go out and play. Irrespective of whether you have a stinker this week, you're in next week. Just go and hammer it. But because there's so much,
Tyrese Shade's just turned 22 years old as well. He's built like a brick shithouse. He's massive. He's got whether it's 6-7 years on, or 6 years on Tommy. I just think he's the better prospect, and he's. I love Tyrese.
Well, James has just tweeted, and he's gone with Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy. Now, I mean, for me, Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy is just every time I see him, it's tantalising, and it's
goals.
It's risky business, because I still feel at any moment it could all go horribly wrong for him and us, and that's there is a nervous excitement around it. But I tell you what, if you could guarantee me Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy's fitness, I would have Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy. God, I mean, I've gone Wakeling, but I've gone Wakeling because I just think that at the moment, I don't want to break Rashawn. And we're talking about the 14th. but you can't argue with Rashawn's pedigree. I mean, he's represented England like right the way through to like the 21s.
I would probably go with Hepburn Murphy at least for the next 4 to 6
to
weeks.
start.
Don't rush him. Just
I don't think he can
bring
start.
him on as subs.
Hepburn Murphy reminds me of watching Michael Owen in the 2006 World Cup.
Yeah.
Like every time he started sprinting, you're waiting for a hamstring to go.
Yeah.
Or whenever he went down, you were thinking, "Fuck me, he's not going to get back up here."
Do you know what, guys? I'm starting Hepburn Murphy on the 14th. I think you're all being pussies, and I think he's fine, and he will score 2 goals, and Austin's getting a hat trick. Because I'm telling you that first game when Hepburn Murphy played against Plymouth, he was electric, and I'm telling you now, all he needs is a game to start, or you know, a couple games, and he's scoring goals.
In the words of Harry McCurdy, you all sound like pussies, bruv.
Yes, indeed. Immortalised on this.
Yeah, but another question there is: do we actually know what Hepburn's Murphy best position is? Is he better like out wide? Is he better as a part of a front two? Better coming from deeper? We just know he's very fast.
He's a striker. 100%. You can see how direct he is. He just goes in on goal. I'm with you guys. I think he's, once he gets his first goal, I think it's just gonna steamroll.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one because you haven't seen. I'm looking at the minutes played in the squad, and the only players that have played less minutes than him in the league are Harries, Roberts, and Dvorak. So I think it's a matter of, I think at some point we need to give him some quality minutes in the team to see what he can really do. I can see why people say he's a striker. I sort of see him as a winger because I think he's got the good flair about him. I can see him being better out wide, taking on a man. And I think, and also I want to see Jeff. I'd rather see Jeffcott up front because I think Jeffcott is just a straight up striker. Like, that's his position. There's no doubt about that.
I think the thing with Hepburn Murphy that we have to be worried about is his injury history. So we've got to be careful with him to not. And if he does start, then he's probably only going to play 60 minutes. But then the case is, does he play the first 60 or does he play last 30?
Personally, I'd have coming on late and terrorising a tired defence rather than have him up against fresh legs when they're going to be far more inclined, you would imagine, to put him in the back of the stand. So me personally, I would say, yeah, have him on late and let him scare the crap out of League Two defenders. But the poll, let's give you a little update on what the poll's saying, shall we? So for those of you still listening in, guys, and not catching up on the recorded show, there is still plenty of time for you to get on and vote. At the moment, the vote is going 57% with Luke Jeffcott, 23% with Hepburn Murphy, 19% with Jacob Wakeling. And at the moment, nobody is voting for Tyrese Shade. It is purely between Wakeling and Hepburn Murphy and Jeffcott to partner.
Just to be clear, guys, I did put a poll out at the start of the show between striker choice between Wakeling and Jeffcott, so don't vote on that one. I just deleted it, actually. But
good lad. Right, okay. So, all right then. So look, by the time I finish naming the team then for the 14th, which I'll just go back through and name our choices, and we probably will. Ellis, would be a good idea to go back and delete. Bearing in mind we got the polls are left open for another day. Probably a good idea if we delete those polls. But the lineup will be on the 14th. If Swindon Town fans and the Sir Tom Broadbent now just picking the team, we are going with a diamond 4-4-2 formation. Sol Bryn has got the nod in goal. Fraser Blake Tracy has got the nod at left back. Marcel Lavinier at right back. Angus MacDonald and Tom Clayton, who we hope will return from injury in time, will make up your centre-back pairing. Then you've got Ben Gladwin on the left of midfield, Ronan Darcy on the right of midfield. You've got Louis Reed as your central defensive midfielder with Johnny Williams as your attacking midfielder. And then you've got Luke Jeffcott partnering Charlie Austin, according to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge polls. And you, dear listeners, what a selection. I think, panel, listen, I'll just put it to you for final thoughts. I think if that was the team, and you had you literally just rolled into the county ground on the 14th. You'd be quite happy with that, wouldn't you, as a lineup?
Telling you now, if it all clicks, that's a league win inside.
If it all clicks,
we'll
team that plays in the
do them
14th.
at least 4-0.
Yeah, if that clicks, that's a team on the 14th. I might have to buy some new pants coming out of the county ground.
Take a spare pair, Joe. That's what
I'll tell you what that.
Good idea.
I'll tell you what that team shows me, which I don't think we've seen at any other point this season. Really, that team just screams of spine to me, because straight down the middle of the team, you've got Sol Bryn, you've got either Clayton or McDonald. Isn't it ironic that I'm saying either or? Because actually, if I had to pick one of the two as my preferred centre back, I'm going Clayton, and I wouldn't have said that at the start of the season as part of a spine. But then you've got Louis Reed as a central defensive midfielder, Johnny Williams as an attacking centre midfielder, and then Charlie Austin as your striker. You look down the middle of that team, that is a spine. Really exciting. My only concerns, of course, are that your midfield four, you're leaving a big gap in the middle there. But obviously, the way that the boys are going to move about, I agree. I mean, for me, that's an offensive lineup. That's a manager taking, investing in his attacking players. And I'll tell you that team also creates a lot of chances for Charlie as well. So I'll just quickly go through. Just give me a yes or no to finish off. Joe, you happy with that as your lineup?
Yeah, very.
Chris, yes or no?
Yes, there's probably only one I didn't really disagree in that, but on the whole, it wasn't a massive disagreement. So yes.
Mike, yes or no? Happy with that as your lineup?
Very happy. Very, very.
Max?
Yeah, all good with that,
Ellis?
mate.
E-I-E-I-E-I-O. Up the football we go.
And Jason?
Yeah, absolutely. It works for me.
All right, that'd do me nicely. Well, listen, it's been fun. There's a whole host of other things that we could have talked about, but we resolved at the start of the show to not turn this into a massive moan fest. And I hope we filled your night with a little bit of light-hearted Swindon Town hilarity, and we've kept you all entertained. If you're listening to the recorded edition, you are, of course, just as welcome as all those hardy souls that joined in with the show tonight live. Thank you ever so much for everyone that contributed. Brilliant of you to do so. The show only really works with you guys kind of pitching in as well. You really are the lubrication to the engine that is the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge. But listen, I'll just wrap things up by saying that, again, do all you can. Get your postie, get your blinking delivery driver, your next door neighbour, your best mate, your mum, your dad, your gran, your aunt, whoever. Get them down the county ground on the 14th. You're going to see some real history there. It's going to be a marvellous moment seeing Charlie Austin back in a Swindon Town shirt. I cannot stress enough, do not look that gift horse in the mouth just because of a bit of rocky form. Like, seize the moment and enjoy it. Enjoy it. Like I said, all four stands open. Let's have a real proper party for the boys' homecoming. The Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge is an independent Swindon Town fan Twitter space, and its views do not represent those of Swindon Town Football Club or Sir Tom Broadbent himself. It's been our absolute pleasure looking after you for the last 3 and ever such a bit hours. Thanks ever so much for your ears, guys. Thanks to all my panel, to Joe, to Chris, to Mike, to Max, to Ellis, to Jason, and all of you guys for listening in. It's been our pleasure. We will catch up with you again next week, and we look forward to seeing you all on the 14th against Grimsby.